Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
I had a dream.
Hashem told you to dance in a tango contest?
A dancing teacher wants to tango with you?
Critics are raving about Tango Shalom. It's clever and inventive, with right chemistry on and off the dance floor.
You're a lunatic!
A funny and thoughtful family film with a warm heart and a playful spirit. From the director of My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, that's my Fernando.
Tango Shalom, in select theaters this weekend.
Hello, and welcome to Midnight Metal. Robert Meyer Burnett and Dave Parker, they're fucking metal. Midnight Metal, Midnight Metal, Midnight Metal.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse. Sober and not drinking tonight. I bet you're happy about that. This is the 50th episode of Midnight Metal. I've got a great show for you. I got great guests. Of course, my co-host is here, and so is Lael Rockwell, coming back again. Please welcome the great panel to tonight's Midnight Metal. First of all, are you two feeling metal tonight? Are you feeling metal?
You already know. I'm ready. Let's go.
I mean, this. I can't believe this is the 50th episode of this show.
The 50th episode of this show, bro. Yes.
I mean, that's almost like, have I been doing this for almost a year? I guess half a year. 2 nights. I mean,
Yes.
this was born out of Zack Snyder's Justice League. You know, I kept saying that movie looks so fucking metal. You know, and I was just because when I saw the trailers, and I just kept saying that. I don't quite know exactly what that means. Heavy metal. It looks like there's lots of clanging metal. It just looked metal.
Yeah.
The sky looked metal. Everything the superheroes did looked metal. The Flash looked metal. Everybody looked. Superman in his black suit looked metal too. So, and then this show was born out of that, and it sort of evolved and grown. The Friday night Midnight Metal is different than the Saturday night Midnight Metal.
Very different.
Friday night's more introspective and thoughtful, and I figured that to have the two of you on here, what I wanted to talk about today was obviously Venom opened today. It's burning up the box office charts. It's made a lot more money than they thought it did. It might have had a $22 million Friday.
Wow.
It's Sony's biggest opening in Russia or something, because it opened in Russia. And I figured we would talk about what. Obviously, everybody who watches this channel is an imagination connoisseur, and everyone loves science fiction, fantasy, and horror films. But we're always arguing about, well, this is good or this sucked. And I want to have a discussion with the two of you about why. What is it that what makes something good? What makes something bad? You know, there's people that love the MCU. Then I'm an MCU lover. Then there's a backlash. I mean, Star Wars movies there's now a spectrum. Like, there's 2 great ones, and then there's a spectrum after that. You know, and for some people, they love certain things. Other people don't, depending on how old you were when you saw him. James Bond coming out next week. I cannot wait, even though I've heard mixed things about it. I'm still going to go in with an open eyes and an open heart, because I love the James Bond franchise. But even the Bond franchise, wildly divergent in terms of the quality of the films. So I guess I would throw it out to you to start with this 50th show It's so great to have you both here. I mean, Lael, we haven't known each other that long, but I love streaming with you. We have such a great time.
Bro, love it. It's the best, bro.
And I love
best.
that you're up at 3 a.m, your time.
Yeah, come on, man. Like I said, I took a nap. I feel good. I feel great. I took a nap. I have my melon in here right in front of me, so I'm ready to go. Let's go.
All right. Well, then I throw it out to you guys.
Yeah.
I guess, Lael, since you're the newbie here,
Yes.
if someone were to say, okay, Lael, you went down on a ship in the middle of the ocean, but miraculously you washed up on a desert island with a home theater system that happens to be solar powered, and
Exactly.
and 10 of your, or no, let's make it 20, 20 of some of your favorite movies. And this, when I go to people's houses, I immediately look at their books and their movie collections, and I judge them. I make value judgments. And I'm very judgmental when it comes to people's books and movies. So I ask you, sir,
Yes.
what would be amongst those 20 miraculously they happen to be your favorite movies that just happen to wash up on the shore? What would some of those movies be?
Oh man, some of those movies. Okay. All right. So and that's easy. Now it's a mix of different things. Of course, like I said, it's going to be extreme nostalgia for me. Of course, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So, Empire, of course, has to be, at the top of the list. Raiders of the Lost Ark, of course. Like if you're not a Raiders fan, I don't know. I can't.
I don't want to know you.
Yeah, exactly. Shawshank Redemption, of course, is definitely one of my favorite films. Outlaw Josie Wells, of course, is definitely on the top of my list as my most favorite. And then there's a couple of different ones. Now, here's a film that when I say I watch it, and the thing is, I guess people have to understand, and as far as comedy is concerned, I am a huge Mel Brooks fan. I love Mel Brooks. So Blazing Saddles.
Oh my.
Blazing Saddles, it has to be at the top of my list. Like seriously, of all time.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Exactly. One exactly. Another film that I think that people that seriously, I don't want them to. As much as I don't want people to do a remake of this film, I wouldn't mind it. But this franchise, Cannonball Run, bro. Cannonball Run was my all-time like literally like it was just like to have a race across just like that is it's just and with all like your Hollywood greats in this film that you wouldn't imagine that would be in one particular film was just phenomenal to me.
All the superstars
superstars came together and they just basically made an Avengers level event with this particular film, like literally.
And part two, right?
And part two, basically. Favorite of all time, like I said. I would also have to throw out there, like I said, the first, the very first Predator, of course.
Yeah.
Now again, people will, when they listen and they hear me tonight, I'm gonna throw out all nostalgia. And it is because, like I said, these are some of my favorite with mixture of some of the new. Of course, the MCU. I am an MCU shill, and I don't mind saying that. I don't mind saying that because come on, man, who doesn't love Infinity War? Who doesn't love Endgame? Who doesn't love the first Avenger? Who doesn't basically love Captain America? Who doesn't love Winter Soldier? Who doesn't love the first Doctor Strange, Black Panther, any of the Thor films, Ant-Man? I love them all, and I basically think it's because they have been cohesively made, and it's so well done for someone like Kevin Feige to come along and do these films the way he's done them, and to really have a plan. Rob, it starts with a plan. That's what it starts with. It starts with a plan, a proper plan, a well-written story. I always say a well-written story beyond the spectacle, beyond everything, the placement, product placement is the well-written story.
Well, I want to let's table the MCU just for a second, because obviously we're going to jump into that and get into that, because I want to continue this thread. But I love your eclectic list. Give us a few more.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So a few more. Let's see here. Some of my favorites. Okay, Serpent in a Rainbow.
Wow. Wes Craven. That's a pull.
Wes Craven, Serpent in the Rainbow, like one of my favorite like horror films of, if you won't even call it that, but one of my favorites of all time. Let's see here. Of course, like if we're sticking along like the horror theme, of course, Night of the Living Dead. I can't. I mean, it's as zany as some of these films are. Again, they just touch your soul because it's just one of those situations where you have to like. Once you're in it, you're in it. You know what I mean? And you're all the way in it. You got to get past like the crazy. It's just the pure feel of a horror film written from a certain perspective. And I know everybody has their own vantage point in the films that they watch, and they might look at it and be like, it's silly. I'm pulling films because, like I said, they are part of things that I've grown up with.
Oh, you know? and Night of the Living Dead. I mean, obviously, it's such a seminal movie, and it's so groundbreaking in so many ways. I mean, and it was uncompromising. It was brutal. The fact that I mean, you have a zombie girl killing her mother. Yes. You have a black man as the central protagonist that actually survives until he doesn't, and it's horror. Yeah. Like even that's just like, oh, it was such a bleak, but it is one of a kind, and it really set the tone. I mean, one of my favorite films of all time, as people know, is Dawn of the Dead. I'm a huge fan, but Night of the Living Dead is even to this day, it's lost none of its power. No. And in a way, to me, I think two of the most influential horror films of all time that really brought in the modern age was Night of the Living Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Exactly.
And, you know, I was reading this past week, somebody had just seen Texas Chainsaw for the first time, and they just hated it. They talked about how stupid it was, and it's really interesting because both Night of the Living Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre really were born out of Vietnam, and the fact that the imagery that we were seeing, American soldiers coming home in body bags, and it was like nothing we'd ever seen before. And those movies definitely had there was, I mean, they're what are they, 7 years apart, and yet they still are. They're incredibly powerful and still important movies.
Yes. Now, one film that I say right now, if you ask me one film that I can watch, there's a couple of films, but one film at the top of my list that I can watch almost every other day, almost every other week, or every week. And it's because it's a film that has a really, really intense and heavy subject matter. But at the same time, it's the connection between that and the pure nostalgia, but also the intensity. One of those things that will have you on the edge of your seat the entire film. And that's Argo, bro. I can watch Argo every other day. The reason why is because I can't remember when I actually sat to the point where my hands were sore because I was pressing on something so hard, thinking that there's no way they're going to escape this. There's no way they're going to get away with this. There's no way. Like, it's way too much. The final 45 minutes of this movie, bro, had my heart beating so bad. Like, right now I can get past it, and I'm like, I'm cool, and I already know what to expect. But still, when I watch it, I'm just like, yo, why do I still feel this rush of blood through my body? Like, how well Ben Affleck, you know, really, really directed this film. It's phenomenal. Like I said, films like that that have you on the edge of your seat, you know, you're very passionate about it. It just consumes you. It consumes your whole being, and it also deals with those type of heavy subject matters and what goes on. And you can have that discussion after a film and that banter back and forth. That's what makes for good cinema, bro. It does.
Well, I just want to say that a super chat came in from Latoya T.
Yeah.
Says, happy golden episode. I feel guilty. I keep the whole family up apparently on Midnight Metal when you're on the show. Well, now I would pose the same question. Somehow you also washed up on the same island that Lael washed up on, and you also 20 or so movies of your favorites washed up in 4K on the beach. What might some of those movies be?
Well, all of Lael's films are fantastic, and I kind of want to grab those too. But and I am nostalgia based. I certainly, there's so many films that we grew up with, especially from the 70s and 80s, that had were on a different level of filmmaking than I think a lot of filmmakers have an approach to. So, we had, that whole era where you had like films like Network and where it was constructed in such a way that it was meant to, it not only portrayed the director's vision, but it told such a relatable story. And, whoever thought you could relate to a news broadcaster or understand what goes on behind the scenes in a way that isn't entirely obvious, and that scene at the end where they're like, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I think we can all relate to that today. Like that, it feels like, wouldn't you love to open up the window and just say, I'm mad as hell? Like, and I think people wouldn't think you were crazy, especially today.
That movie, Network, has lost none of its power. I mean, you watch it now and it's like, how did Patty Chayefsky know this was going to happen? Because we're there. And it's an incredible, I mean, the whole thing, that Howard Beale scene and what it all means, it's just, like you said, I do think that movies of the 70s, obviously people, when you're in film school, people talk about, well, the greatest eras of American film were the 40s and the 70s. But you go back and you watch, a lot of my favorite movies were made in the 70s. And I hate to say this, but they were just much smarter. And they assumed the audiences watching them were smarter, and I feel like we don't get anything. We have a lot of whether it's Denis Villeneuve or whether it's Martin Scorsese or other directors have said the Marvel movies aren't cinema. And I think the funny thing about it is what they were saying, and what they were trying to say is that, look, we're inundated with all of these superhero films at the expense of other movies because they're making tons of money. And the fact that when you go back and you watch films in the 70s, they are, you realize, my God, I'm starving for the kind of nourishment that these movies give to the intellect. Not only were they great, beautifully made, and very, like, one of my favorite films of all time is Bob Fosse's All That Jazz. Yes. And that came out in 1979, and the movie is basically about him. He wrote it's a movie. It's about art. It's about being a filmmaker, being a Broadway director, being a choreographer, all those things. And it's really an examination of the artist's life and how complex people can be. And the film was hugely influential on me. I saw it, I think I was 12 when I saw it, and I was just blown away. And the editorial, it made me want to become an editor. Because of the way the film was cut. And, I've even tried to show it to people now. People go, well, that was fine. And they don't, we're not, because audiences have to be trained to be able to watch movies like that and get something out of them. I hear so many, it's like, oh, that movie was boring. I hate when people say things are boring. I always want to go, no, you're boring. The problem is not the movie. The problem is you, if it's a problem. But so I don't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's really okay. And then I also wanted to follow it up, in regards to Network, I would follow that up with Broadcast News, but two other films that I think were incredibly important, and these films still terrify me to this day, are from the 70s, are The Exorcist and The Omen. And I think that filmmaking went into a different direction when those films were made. And we talk about having dread and fear in a horror film, and Dave has spoken a lot about this, maintaining that level of dread. And I think both of them do that. And the worst part about it is that they feel incredibly real because they're based, maybe not everything is based on a real life experience, but the scariest horror is horror that can actually happen to you. And it doesn't feel like we're out of the possibility of that happening. That's the thing that they managed to do for me, was that the film to this day is still something that scares me because I feel like that could actually happen to any one of us. And so, when they can instill that in you, you better be grateful that that's not happening to you. Exactly. That's a perfect horror film. And I agree with, of course, Night of the Living Dead. They have an animated Night of the Living Dead. I like any reincarnation of any kind of living dead. And, I think that film, too, they had a version of I Am Legend that, what's that guy? The older horror film guy, that version of it.
There's the last man on Earth with Vincent Price was actually the first version of I Am Legend.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly similar to, let's say, the remake, which I love as well. But I think that when you watch that film, you're like, what is going on? It has that feeling of Night of the Living Dead. And I like the black and white. I like the idea of there's no escape, and he's kind of driving around in his car that looks like a hearse. And it's just the free for all fantasy. If you could take the king of horror films and at that era and put him in a story and trying, he made it work. I think for that time period to explain what I Am Legend is seemed very far fetched. We're comfortable with it now because we've had so many films that deal with that type of topic. But at that time, can you imagine going to the theater and someone saying, "Yeah, this is crazy film about some guy and there's some kind of weird virus"? Like, I think it's very interesting that they were able to pull that off, and it looks good even now. I've watched it, and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of interesting.
It still holds up.
That movie's actually been remade. Well, it's been made 3 times.
Yes.
There's the Omega Man with Charlton Heston, Rosalind Cash from the early 70s, and then there's, of course, I love everything about the Will Smith version that doesn't have the creatures in it.
Yes.
Because I think the movie was really, if that book was one of the first horror novels that I ever read, Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, and what's really interesting in that book, the Robert Neville character becomes a vampire hunter. He's going after when civilization has changed, and so the script gets flipped because Neville becomes the mythological creature that's hunting the new vampire order. So, and when they finally kill him at the end, when the vampires kill him at the end, the last line of the book is "I Am Legend," where Neville realizes that he has become the creature that haunts the nightmares of the vampires, and when they finally get rid of him. But it's funny to me, I love the way Francis Lawrence made I Am Legend, but then the creature part made no sense, and the fact that they were CG creatures, it was really bizarre that they're just standing around in rooms together, like all huddled. It was, the whole point was that they started their own new society, and I didn't like how the creatures were portrayed, but I thought Will Smith, he's acting by himself most of that movie.
Yeah, he carried that whole film.
Incredible.
And his performance was amazing, and he was convincing from beginning to end. Him and his dog, and the tragedy of losing his wife and child in the beginning of the story, which was told in the flashback form, but also living in New York and kind of having this lab. That feels very comic book to me. You got a lab in your basement, and you're kind of like that's pure comic book quality of stuff that we would expect, especially for a modern film remade in that way. And another thing I was going to say is, getting back to what Lael was saying, the Battle of the Hollywood Stars, like it was like a series of movies like Cannonball Run, but also like we used to get to see them on TV. Like they'd have these TV made movies, like all those sort of things that you would constantly see your favorite stars and actors, kind of like a precursor to, before we had reality TV, that was reality TV. Yeah. So, we got to see them, and then we would expect to see them in films coming up, and you would see that person appear, but it would be just sort of this fun event that they would be at. And it wasn't meant to be taken seriously at all. No. You were seeing, Eric Estrada from Chips. He was going to be, playing, some cornhole or whatever it was, whatever they had them battle and kind of do. And I kind of think that created a lot of excitement, for a lot of viewers, because you were like, I can't wait to see, this person in the next upcoming film. But I also wanted to say that, and I completely agree with you in regards to, what you're looking for in for a story, for screenplay. There has to be a balance, getting back to what you were saying, Robert, between physical or practical effects and CGI, so that it's believable.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about, I'm always banging on about verisimilitude, the idea that something appears real. And The Exorcist is my all-time favorite horror movie. And the reason I love it is because it has peak verisimilitude. I mean, you literally, if that movie was made in a different way, it would be silly. You know, when Reagan McNeil is possessed and spitting the pea soup and her head's turning all around and all, it works because Friedkin, he came out of documentary filmmaking, and after he made French Connection and won the Academy Award there, he's great at, like, I'll tell you, the first time I saw that movie, I got a VCR for my bar mitzvah when I turned 13, and I went and got, with my bar mitzvah money, this was back when there weren't really any video stores. We had one video store in Seattle, and I went, and The Exorcist was one of the first movies that I got, and I had never seen it. And I'm 13 years old, just turned 13, and I saved it until midnight. And I put on The Exorcist, waited till midnight, put it on. I couldn't get past the scene in Iraq. The tone of it when it ends with Father Marin, even watching these dogs fighting over a bone, the way it was shot, there was just cutaways to like a man with one eye and the sound. And I'm like, there's no way I can watch any more of this movie. And they didn't even get out of Iraq, and I was terrified. I was absolutely, when you see Marin and the statue of Pazuzu, and you hear just the droning, I'm like, there's no, I was so scared. And there was not anything, it was just the tone. I had the feel of it. I'm like, oh, it took me to, because I'd seen a lot of Hammer horror movies. I'd seen Night of the Living Dead, but I'd never seen anything that felt real, like a horror movie, and it was different.
Really puts you on it. It puts you in that feel of the film.
Yeah, and then of course I watched it the next day. And the thing about The Exorcist that people forget is really, you've got these parallel stories of Chris McNeil, the actress that Ellen Burstyn plays, and then you also have Father Karras, Damien Karras. And he's lost it. His mother died, and he wasn't there for her, and he's racked with guilt, and he's basically lost his faith in God. He feels that God has forsaken him. He's lost his faith, and it's done in such a realistic, like, if you're watching that story of Father Karras, you'd never know you're in a horror movie. If you took
I do just want to say this before you stop talking about The Exorcist, Robert, and you too, Lael. Can we talk about the physical effects? Because there's no CGI for The Omen, right? Or The Exorcist.
Oh.
Can we talk about physical effects? Because I've never had or heard anyone talk about the physical effects. I'm sure they have, but I haven't heard it. What do you know about the physical effects in The Exorcist?
Well, they had, first of all, you had Dick Smith doing the makeup, and at the time, probably the greatest living makeup. I mean, people thought that Max von Sydow was really old. He was not. And Father Marin, when he shows up, he looks like he's an ancient. It's one of the great old age makeups. Dick Smith also did the age makeup on Dustin Hoffman for Little Big Man, and on David Bowie for The Hunger. And then, of course, they had the great makeup effects technicians doing all the pieces on poor little Linda Blair, and it was they had, and what they were doing was, again, they were trying to make it appear real. I mean, that movie takes place in a house. It's not like they're in the mountains of Carpathia or something, and and it's the familiar surroundings that are so, and it's also so profane. Like the stuff that goes on and what happens to her, it's so uncompromising, and because the story of the corruption of an innocent, it's a terror. What's so great about it? It truly is horrific. I mean, the idea that this poor sweet little girl is she's being, her innocence, everything about her is being corrupted, and then as these stories come together and Father Karras confronts what's going on, and even the scene when she's having the spinal tap and the documentary medical procedure, it's all done because William Friedkin knew that I'm going to convince people that this is absolutely real. And when it opened, there were people freaking out in the theater because they hadn't seen
anything like that before at
that
time.
And something else that I did want to ask both of you is this an example of the fact, or let's say an example of a film that there was no CGI. It's an example of a film that could just straight by physical effects alone can terrify and entertain. Is this an example of that?
See here, and that's what the way it wasn't just about, okay, you had the practical effects, but it was how the film was lit. Just basically how well it was lit, and from what vantage point you were able to actually see the film. Like the way the angles, how they would have the camera angles just over top of the actor's head while he's looking, so you get a chance to see from his vantage point how he sees. It's like through his eyes is how he sees this person. The sound of, if you've ever, and I'm gonna tell you, try this once. Watch The Exorcist. Watch it in a surround sound room, and you will hear things that you have never heard in this film. Even the dubs of how they had the voices, her voice, and how when he's speaking to her, you can hear the growls, the moans, like you can hear all of that in the background in the surround sound section, like you're watching it in a theater. It's some of the most amazing sounds. Like the way the sound editing for this film was amazing.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
And that you just pointed out, like there's all this stuff buried underneath to create that sense of unsettling, and like you said, there's a lot of subliminal editing and stuff going on, but there's also tons of that in the sound design of that film. And again, that's why I said, like the Father Marin scene at the beginning in Iraq, the drones and the ambient, the sounds, and it's just it's interesting because they use diegetic sound. So for people that don't know, diegetic sound is sound that exists within the frame of the movie, so it sounds that it's actually happening. Like if you had an example, would be if music's playing on a radio, that's diegetic, and you hear it on the soundtrack. So a movie score is not that. But what's amazing is the idea that these sounds are in the room, like when Mercedes McCambridge, when you hear her voice coming out of Reagan's, in here with us, and you hear this stuff that's happening. It's supposed to be happening like there in the room, and like there truly is a doorway to hell that's been opened. And
exactly, even when the opening, the scene when you see the car pull up, him in front of the house, the way it's one of the most iconic shots, and it's still, you'll see that even today. Like how it's lit to the point where you see him in between him and the home. There's like a lighting that you can see the fog. You see basically all this. It just gives you that eerie feel. Like, all right, he's about to get in some shit. Like literally, he himself. What they wanted to basically create was the simple fact that, okay, yes, this man who is a man of faith, at the same time, he has a bit of skepticism and fear, because it's like, wait a minute, this is something that I did not expect, but I can feel it before I walk in that house. And they gave you the same thing. Like you felt what he felt before he walked in that home. It was incredible, bro. The funny thing is, you make a good point, because to me, the reason I love verisimilitude so much is, like, especially in a horror film, if you can create that, you can make something that's far more unsettling and far more disturbing for people, for audiences to watch. And now horror movies today are obviously, they're very stylized, and even the people in movies today and television, they're too pretty. People are too, they don't look like people in the real world look. But in the 70s, when you had people like Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider and Jason Miller, who plays Father Karras, these were not matinee idol looking people. So the actors that were the top of their game, I mean, Al Pacino was one of the better looking dudes in movies. But these were people that had interesting faces, and you believed them as the characters. Like in the 80s, I think people started to get much better looking, but even in a movie like Midnight Cowboy, you've got Dustin Hoffman and John Voight, and it all looks real, as opposed to the stylization now. I don't know if, like, they're talking about Blumhouse, they're going to do like an Exorcist trilogy, and I'm like,
All right. But we've seen Exorcist sequels. I mean, I love Exorcist 3. I love Exorcist 3.
Yeah.
But
I also want to ask you guys about and we did talk about sound and like I agree with you 100%. I want to also talk about the idea of using voiceovers for The Exorcist, because obviously there must have been voiceovers for this.
Yeah.
And just the notion that even as an actor, or whether you weren't the actor in it and you had to do these voiceovers and achieving that level of verisimilitude, of perfection in it, just is astounding at how perfect it comes out. Even when you watch it on on TV and it's not the best version of the film, you're seeing the quality that was put into it. And, I just kind of as a horror film person, talking about the voiceovers for a film like The Exorcist, what that experience must have been like for the actors.
Oh, I mean,
you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? Real quick, Rob. You know what was really incredible about that is the sound editing. Really, okay. So when you're hearing these actors, and even when they basically want to, when they're doing overdubs, so when they're actually doing the voiceovers, part of what made that film incredible was the simple fact that you felt the fear without the score complementing the voiceover dubs. It was just the voices at that time that you heard before the score even hit. You're listening to it and you're like, yo, it'll have you looking around your house like, yo, like literally. And that's the reality of it, is that they made it purely conversational, but it's the simple fact that you're again, they're placing you in the minds of these actors, these characters in the real world. Like, you can feel like it's something that could possibly happen right next to you. And that was the importance. It's not just how well the story was written, but the sound and the voices and the bass that they gave it. Yo.
The Exorcist won 2 Academy Awards, and would you be surprised to know that one of them was for best sound?
Yes.
Yeah, and it also won for best screenplay, but it was nominated for best picture, best actress, best actor, best supporting actress, best director, Owen Roizman's cinematography, which it should have won, best art direction, and best film editing. And I, again, I wonder if it's even possible to recreate something like that today. I mean, it's hard, especially with horror films. It's really hard to do that. I mean, I think I think James Wan has come close. Like, I remember, was it Insidious 1 that had the Tiptoe Through the Tulips playing on the record player? He does a really good job of creating jump scare moments and things like that. I mean, Malignant is obviously supposed to be highly stylized, and it's a throwback, but that's what I'm always looking out for, movies that do create that reality, and I think, look, I love, like you said, Lael, I love Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. And part of the reason that movie works so well is the photography. Yes. The photography, it's Roger Deakins. It's a beautifully photographed. You believe, I mean, the funny thing about Shawshank Redemption is it's a Stephen King story, so it's got a lot of characters in it, like the cast of the characters, and yet you still buy it. I mean, it's got a lot of movie tropes, like when the young kid shows up and they're playing the rock and roll music, and we liked him right away, and exactly. That story, I used to read that story every year for Christmas. I don't know why. I love the story. The story is actually called Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. That's the name of the original story. And again, even though that movie is much more of a movie, you still believe it. It's done in such a way that you buy. There's an incredible, one of my favorite sound effects in any movie is at the beginning when you're seeing it's an aerial shot of the entire prison, and the camera passes by a flag that's flapping in the and when the camera goes by, you hear the flap. It's just the sound editing, the way they brought it in and out. It's one of my favorite sound effects in any movie ever. Just that fluttering flag.
I also want to add to Lael's Shawshank Redemption, the Hudsucker Proxy, which I feel is in that realm. They're both kind of these period pieces that have excellent stories and excellent performances, but bring you into that world of, looking at the frailty of life and perhaps the imperfections of the way that things work and how people have to deal with this. But I also wanted to mention some other films that I liked were Ghostbusters, because that was like such an important film for me growing up as a kid. And anything gritty New York, like any gritty New York films, like we had mentioned, is it Cronenberg? Like he maybe it's not him, but The Exterminator.
That's James Glickenhaus directed The Exterminator.
Sorry,
with Robert Ginty.
Yes. And then, even the Cruising, any of those gritty sort of New York stories. And, Leal and I are pretty much grew up in the same area. You remember what New York used to be like. And I feel a drawing towards seeing, that kind of life at that time. I'm not quite sure why, but I must see, 70s New York, and that just whole kind of like the nighttime and people hanging out on the streets, and like there's something about it
it's that draw, that vibe, because it's one of those things where we've grown up in pocket areas of New York where you see and you feel these things, but you never really, you didn't actually, for us, we didn't give it the respect it should have had back then, because we were just a part of it. Whereas now, as we've grown and we've grown past decades and seen certain things and how it's changed, it's like, wow, like we missed that vibe. You want it back because it was just the popular moments back then. So to see this in film, it just makes it all the more better, man.
And then the other ones that I would add to round off my selections would be, I liked the X-Men movies. I liked a lot of them, but I especially liked the Wolverine one with where he goes to Japan.
Yeah,
and I don't know
the Wolverine.
I thought that was like,
great hot toy, by the way.
Oh, yes. I thought not only was it a fantastic performance by Hugh Jackman, but maybe perhaps the perfect Wolverine film, in my opinion. And I feel that those are the precursors for a lot of, our MCU stuff that we began to expect to see films like this. Like after seeing those sets of films, at least for me, The Watchmen was another one that is so important for me. And I also need to have like my Interview with a Vampire, Underworld, all those Dark City kind of things, The Hunger, that kind of, vampire, sexy, stuff. And my all-time favorite film, Entrapment.
Wow. You mean with Sean Connery?
Yes, and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah. I can see the poster in my mind's eye. I want to jump back to what you were just saying about. I grew up in Seattle, which was like the least dangerous urban area you could imagine. So I mean, it was if your car broke down in what passed for like the worst part of Seattle, like, and this happened to my dad once. Somebody would come out and go, "Sir, would you like to use my phone?" Seattle was not hard. We were not a hard city. I mean, that's why our famous rapper was Mix-a-Lot. Put your titties on the glass. That's about as hard as it gets. I mean, if he talks about it like there's one song called Seattle. I was born in a Seattle.
Yeah, right.
And he's singing My Hoopty and Posse on Broadway, Swass and all that. Which is great. And I'm like that was Seattle. That's our hip hop. And then of course we gave birth to Macklemore too, popping tags. But it was fun. So I loved gritty New York stories, and I loved sleazy horror movies like Basket Case, which took place, or Abel Ferrara's Driller Killer, or Maniac. Or MS-45, I love that shit, because we didn't have anything. It was so like watching gritty 70s New York movies that were sleazy. I mean, and to me, the greatest one of all is Taxi Driver. I mean, Martin Scorsese's Taxi Drivers. Yes. And I'm like, because to me, our experience of city was so different. I didn't get to go to New York for the first time until 1990. And I was this is the greatest place on the planet Earth. Oh, I mean, I loved it, but that grittiness, again, talk about verisimilitude. I mean, when you were looking at just, and I loved sleazy, I love stories about hookers and drug dealers, pimps, whatever. The sleazier, the better. And there was great 70s sleazy movies.
It's really good.
I loved it.
But you know what? Even through the sleaze, you basically saw the art. Like that's the thing, is you saw the art. It was like with New York, you will always see art through tragedy. Like literally, you always do. And this is like one of my. All right, so another one. I want to throw this in, and I'm gonna let you go. It was and people probably didn't like this film, but I loved it. And that was Nighthawks with Sylvester Stallone
and Rutger
Billy D.
Hauer.
Williams and Rutger Hauer.
Wolfgar.
That film, like literally, it showed you somewhat of the grit and even like the Studio 54 nightlife of New York. Like just that one scene with them in the actual club, like that was New York at that time. Like that's just the way it was. So like films like that don't get the credit that they deserve for basically giving you a flashback, but also just putting you in the moment. And that's the thing, is if you can get me in that moment, that which for me makes a successful film.
Yeah.
Now, and I think that's exact. I agree with that completely. And I think the person who kind of picked up, or continued the tradition in that would be Spike Lee for me. Let's say with New York, with all of his films that where a lot of them told, a specific period in time, like, Do the Right Thing, that was New York in 1980. Like that it was a valid film, and it has definitely cultural significance, and you can't you could try and recreate it, but he truly captured that moment. And, he has obviously Spike Lee is incredible, but he had an ability to capture a moment in time and to preserve it on film. And, it's as good as it was 25 years ago.
Oh, it's older than that. It's what, 89?
30 years ago.
But, and, I even have to mention Spike Lee. Going back, I was talking about this in 86 when he put out She's Gotta Have It. That also had a New York. I mean, his movies are as much about New York as Woody Allen's are about New York. I mean, he even when he makes, like, I love his movie Inside Man, the heist thriller, or the 25th Hour, or and of course the thing about Do the Right Thing is it's incredibly stylized. It's not that gritty, that Martin Scorsese vibe. It's completely stylized, and I recently rewatched Do the Right Thing, and it's such a good movie. I mean, it really, like you said, it captures that New York, that whole vibe of that neighborhood, the gentrification, and people starting to encroach on other people's neighborhoods and what that all means. And it's great.
What's great about it is the simple fact that this man, what Spike does and how he's able, like, he captured everything that you need to know about New York on one block.
Yes.
Right.
one block. It was just a block. Like this one section of New York, on one block, you got a chance to see everything, the diversity, just the cultural segregation that goes on one block. Like that's the thing. And you just imagine, like, look, the budget, he was probably like, man, look, fuck a budget. I'm cool on one block. I'm good on one block. Like literally.
We don't even have to move the camera.
We
just
don't have to move on one block. That's it. You know what I mean? I'll just move it on one block. And that was just amazing how he actually did that. But you can, the attention to the narrative at that point and how it phases from one section to the other. And that's the thing is with Spike, he does that. He gives you the message, the entertainment, but he doesn't want to lose you solely in the actual message. He wants to give you a great story, but he doesn't want you to forget why you're there. And that's the point.
Yeah, and I do think that, well, there's a bunch of people are firing in super chats.
Bro, you just made like $1 million in super chats. I just watched that.
They're pretty great. So Tom Jr. Jackson talked about Argo. Has a huge Steve Ditko connection. It's actually Jack Kirby. It's Jack Kirby, Tom, that in the real event he was involved in that actual sequence doing the artwork for that fake movie. So and then Paul from Twin Flicks has a question for all three of us. This is a good question. What is the most underrated movie that you love that the majority of people haven't seen but need to?
Oh, wow. Oh wow.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is tough. We have to think on this one.
Yeah,
I mean-
yeah. Let me think real quick.
Yeah, it's hard because a underrated movie that I love that most people haven't seen. That's the thing, that if they haven't seen it, I don't know. I mean, there's so many movies that, you mentioned Cruising. Not a movie I would tell everybody to see, but it's certainly a movie that again, directed by William Friedkin, and that's a sleazy New York story too. Shot in the late 70s.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one.
Yes.
If you want an emotional roller coaster of a film that pulls on your heartstring and shows you the torture of a man who loves with everything he has and loses it all and will go to any lengths to get it back, A Moment in Time. Bro. What was it? What was his name? Christopher Reeves.
Somewhere in Time.
Somewhere in Time.
Oh, I love that. Oh, and Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour.
That movie, man, like literally, like made me cry like a bitch at the end of that movie because it was
a fantasy film,
it was
right?
a fantasy film,
Time travel,
but to the point where when he lost it all and just felt like, yo, the only way I can see her again is through death. Like, wow, like that film is probably to me one of the most underrated, but it was beautifully written and it was beautifully directed.
That's a good choice. I mean, and that it's funny because those were movies that everybody talked about, and then because modern audiences are not watching older movies, that they don't. That was a movie that everybody, when I was a kid, everyone talked about it, and it was everyone saw it, and I think that's a problem as well with. I mean, I hate being that guy going. I hate being the Simpsons meme, old man yelling at clouds, which people have sent me that 1,000 times when I talk about Star Trek. But what I do find sort of disappointing about, especially, we do a lot of talking about movies on this channel, obviously, imagination connoisseurs and all that. But there's a lot of people that don't go back and watch. Like when I was a kid, I never not watched movies because they were 30 or 40 or 50 years old. I mean, I'm like, I have to see all these movies.
Yeah.
I remember watching Double Indemnity, and of course, even when I watched it for the first time, probably in the early 80s, it's a 40s noir. But I still watched it, even though it was black and white and the dialogue doesn't... you have to see it. And I feel like today, there's a lot of audiences that are missing out on a lot, especially movies of the 70s. I mean, obviously, people watch The Godfather. The Godfather and The Godfather 2 are my two favorite movies of all time. Yeah. But... you go back and I love when people go, those movies are overrated, and it drives me crazy.
No, you're right. I also wanted to mention that Paul, who asked the question maybe a few weeks ago, it might be a month or two ago, reviewed a film called Gattaca. And he did mention in the review that a lot of people are unaware of the film or like it was a big deal when it came out. Like it was very futuristic. In its appearance, and it was beautifully done.
I just got the 4K Steelbook. I love that film. And Jude Law's incredible in it, and everybody. Gore Vidal is in that movie.
Yeah, Uma Thurman, and if I remember correctly, what was very interesting was that everybody got their DNA tested, and it seemed it's not that it seemed far-fetched, it just didn't seem like it would be possible to do that at that time. And now that's something we're doing over and over again now with different companies, and it's just become perhaps maybe the reality. I don't think the entire intention of the film was to tell us how horrible the future was going to be, but a lot of the predictions in the film about how we would be living our lives, I feel are reflected in modern times. And Paul had featured that, from Twin Flicks, had featured that in one of his videos. So I just thought maybe that was another example of a film.
And Rob, you
know about.
Exactly what you should do, what you guys should do. Like next time we actually have a get together like this, we should actually talk about films that were ahead of their time. That were way ahead of their time.
Absolutely. That's a really good idea. But Gattaca is what science fiction I think can do best, and it offers a glimpse to our future, and sort of, and like you said, it was very prescient in that it's we're moving there very quickly. I mean,
Right.
with gene editing technology and the moral questions that movie asks, like, okay, if we can have all this, what does that mean? Is this a good thing? Is that kind of genetic? Should we do this? You know, and what does it mean for us as people? And I love Ethan Hawke he's so great in the film and the whole. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
But they did a good job of creating, you know, we talk about this, the story was great, and they did a good job of creating this futuristic world. I mean, it feels very futuristic, but I'm not quite sure. It doesn't feel like there were necessarily special effects in this film.
No.
It feels like, it does feel like the future, and they did this by using tropes from older films that said, this is what the future is going to look like.
Yeah.
And they created that futuristic world that looks very futuristic. It looks very, you know, 2010 or 2100 or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It does feel very futuristic.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's funny. I haven't answered Paul's question. I don't really have, but you know, Gattaca is a movie that I thought's one of the finest. I mean, to throw another movie out there along with Gattaca, Children of Men. I don't know if you've seen Children of Men is an incredible, to me, if you go back and look at the first 20 years of the 21st century, Gattaca and Children of Men are two of the finest science fiction films, and they're both kind of dealing with the same thing. For those of you who haven't seen Children of Men, it's about a future where there's no children being born. We're all like, humanity is sterile, and so and the youngest person somehow died by accident, and it's this really bleak, sad story. And then, of course, there is a baby that's born. You know, a woman has a baby, but it's hope. Yes, and it does have incredible verisimilitude. It's incredibly realistic, and it's got a lot of really interesting stuff in it about the future. But to me, Gattaca and Children of Men make a great double feature. So if you haven't seen those movies, get them both and watch them, because they're spectacular. S Beam sends in a super chat. Thank you, S Beam.
Hi, S Beam.
I got to put that episode up of you guys.
Yes.
Paul from Twinflix goes on again, and he says, what is one movie that you like or love that people hated and look at you weird when you say you like it? One of mine is Waterworld. I love that movie, especially the director's cut, and I won't apologize for it. I like Waterworld. I recently got the Arrow box set that came out with the 3 different versions of the film. I mean, I understand it's Road Warrior on the water, but I don't care. There's a lot of stuff in it I like. So what do you think, you guys? Do you have a movie that you love that everybody hates?
I'm trying to think. Is there a film that I loved? Oh, okay. I forget the name of this film. It was a classic 70s John Travolta film where it's funny that we're talking about that. He was a sound editor.
Dude, it's Blowout. Brian De Palma's Blowout.
Blowout. Exactly.
Oh, you don't have to apologize for that. That movie's a masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece, but when I tell people about that film, and it's some people that are my age, and they're like, man, I hate it. I'm like, I love that film. It was incredible.
Dude, it's Brian De Palma directed it. That movie is incredible.
Blowout, yes. Blowout was one of my favorite. It's the thing is, it's for him an ingenious idea of a guy who's trying to solve a murder, goes back using his actual, you know, his talent and his specialty in just sound editing, where he actually went out that night, just happened to be at the right place at really the wrong time.
Yeah.
And just captured sound and able to go back and solve things through sound. Like, wow, even though it like the ending, I was like so pissed because I was like, oh, you want her to live. And it's just like, oh. But yeah, it was an incredible film. That was probably one of the ones that I liked that people did.
Yeah, that's one of that's one of De Palma's best movies. You know, people like Quentin Tarantino love Blowout, and Blowout's a great film. Again, I have the Criterion disc of that. That's an amazing movie, and who would have ever thought to make a sound recordist the protagonist of a movie?
The protagonist,
you know, it's like, that's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah,
for me, the film that I would say that, and I don't believe anybody really liked this film, and that's okay. It's a film called The Weight of Water. And it's from 2000.
Catherine Bigelow directed that.
Yes, and it stars Sean Penn, and it's kind of a crazy, twisty murder mystery story, but it also has a sort of like a modern day story to it.
Yeah.
And like it's very strange things that happen in the film, but I felt that if you were going to try and push the limits, push the envelope of what you could include a film to make it interesting, but also have a period piece within a film. Of a modern day film, this one has done it. Like, if someone said, I want you to take this film and combine them together, it'd be very difficult to do that concept, but they did it here perfectly. Yeah. And there's like this one scene where, what's that lovely woman? Elizabeth Hurley is kind of like trying to seduce Sean Penn in the film. And she's on a boat and she's kind of like taking her top off and all sort of stuff. And I'm like, the thing that grabbed me about that scene was that, like there were certain elements in it that people do in real life. It's like, if you like a guy, perhaps you might, put on your best outfit or whatever, try to get him, do everything that you can. And, this film dealt with relationships and some of the things that we do even today to solidify an intimate encounter with someone else. And so whether we do it and it results in an actual occurrence or whether it's just a fantasy that we're holding on to, the film manages to do that. And that's why I love that film.
Here's an interesting factoid about me. My ex-wife designed the home video campaign, the print campaign for that movie I think it was Lionsgate. So she did that. Yeah, she my ex-wife designed movie posters. And print ads and things like that. So shout out to Elena. She did a good job.
Wow.
I would have to say that a movie that I dearly love that a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy is the 1985 masterpiece directed by Fritz Kirsch, who directed Children of the Corn, Tough Turf.
Oh, you like Tough Turf?
Starring James Spader and Robert Downey Jr. and Kim Richards.
From something mountain, I can't remember. Her name.
Escape to Which Mountain? Kim Richards.
Tough
Turf is ridiculous. It's basically a gang movie, like a 50s gang movie, but set in the 80s. It's so silly, but I love it. I think it's great. Robert Downey Jr. plays the drummer in a punk rock band. So really, it was the first Age of Ultron. Tough Turf was a trial run for Age of Ultron. So, it's
you could look at.
There's a lot of street scenes, night street scenes in that movie with the, kind of cars driving down the strip and things like that.
It
captured a moment.
There's a scene where James Spader, because he comes from he comes from a posh family from the East Coast that's now moved out to L.A. because he got kicked out of Phillips Exeter Academy or something, and he wears a lot of sweaters. And one day, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is they go to the Beverly Hills Country Club, and because he's such a well-heeled young man, he's able to sneak Robert Downey Jr. and Kim Richards into this club, and they pretend like they're children of members, and they go to this buffet, and then he sits down at the piano and sings a song, and it's so absurd, but I love it so much. And I saw it because my friend Adam Carl in high school, he and I would once a month we'd go okay, we're going to go and see what we think is going to be the worst movie that's currently in theaters. and sometimes we would go see movies that I love, Tough Turf was one of them. Another one was Night of the Comet. If you've ever seen that.
I remember Night of the Comet.
Yeah, and we're like, this movie's gonna suck. Yeah, we thought it was gonna suck, but it didn't suck. It was quite good. Jordy Lyons, by the way, is in the chat and says, is Disney too big to fail? Paramount survival is at a certain percentage point. Jordy was telling me he's been hearing information about what's going on at Paramount and Netflix, and it's going to be interesting to see all of this play out. Are we going to go? Is the entertainment business going to go on strike this week? Who knows? Is IATSE going to strike?
Someone in the chat mentioned the King of New York. Some people are saying Invasion of the Body Snappers, Darth Scipio, Charlie the Unicorn. It might have been Charlie the Unicorn.
King of New York, by the way, is fucking great. That was directed by Abel Ferrara, who directed Driller Killer. Nobody did sleazy New York the way Abel Ferrara does. And King of New York, man, Christopher Walken, David Caruso. I mean, the
Lawrence
cast of that.
Fishburne was in it.
Yeah, like
Yes,
incredible,
yes, he
yeah.
was. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And Mondo Bizarro says Evil Dead 2 is his favorite, but he still loves the first Evil Dead. I'm just looking through some. I think it was Single Songwriter who mentioned King of New York. One person, Silver Kino Gary, says The Lost Boys and Fright Night hooked me as a kid for horror.
I mean, if you go back, I got to look at it. So in King of New York, Christopher Walken, David Caruso, Lawrence Fishburne, Wesley Snipes, Giancarlo Esposito, Steve Buscemi. I mean, what a cast.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
And by the way, I have it on 4K. I have it on 4K. So.
Wow, I'm just looking here because Single Songwriter said that he actually went to middle school with James Spader back in Massachusetts days,
Wow.
1976 to 79. Wow.
Wow.
Crazy. That's what's up.
I wanted to be James Spader so bad. His role as the drug dealer Rip in Less Than Zero.
In Less Than Zero.
Yes, I love.
He had some of the coolest blazers back then. Like seriously, the rolled up sleeve blazers, slick back hair.
Yeah, I love
Oh, dude,
top.
pretty in Pink. He's always wearing those
Pretty in
cool
Pink.
those linen jackets.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like
His hair, that hair.
Oh yeah, I love.
Dark
his-
Scipio
Oh.
also says The French Connection is the greatest New York film ever made. That's what he says. Lost
Again,
in
made
New
by
York
William
is the best.
Friedkin.
Yeah.
And we also have another person, S. Beam, said that Inside Man is one of his favorites.
It's such a good movie. Inside Man.
But we
is
do
so
have
good.
a lot of super chats.
I know.
while
There's.
we're-
I'm. Yeah.
Sorry, Robert.
Glenn Mark, Kiora Rob, Glenn Mark from New Zealand, NZ. From 2000 AD, most know Judge Dredd and Rogue Trooper, but my favorite comes from Alan Grant and John Wagner, Ace Trucking Company. I loved Ace Trucking Company. I am familiar with it, and I have read them, and I have to say, I love the 2000 AD comics, but my favorite thing that was in 2000 AD was an Alan Moore thing called DR and Quinch. And DR and Quinch were like these two. They were kind of like Cheech and Chong in space, but they're very dangerous too. And I loved DR and Quinch. But the Ace Trucking Company. That's a good pull. 2000 AD is great. As a matter of fact, I just was looking through my old 2000 AD comics from the 80s, and love that. So, that's great. The Great Muda sends in a super chat and says, I think you're trying to say Elysium, ILYSM.
I love Elysium.
Is that an acronym? I could be wrong. It looks like Elysium. That's obviously that's a cool science fiction movie that was directed by Neil Blomkamp.
It was really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. If that's what you're saying, it could be because it's all caps. It might be an acronym that I'm not familiar with, but it does say Elysium, so maybe that's what you're talking about.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh no.
You know what I was thinking about real quick before you go in that super chat. I just came to me just real quick. It was an old Robert Zemeckis film that released in the 80s. Used Cars, bro.
Oh, dude, that movie's great.
That movie.
Used Cars is great.
Oh man.
No, he had to move those. That movie. Look, Kurt Russell's one of Kurt Russell's finest. Like that movie back in the 80s. Used Cars. If you haven't seen it, I'm out in the chat. Go see that film. It's an incredible film.
I love Used Cars. Yeah, I have that on Blu-ray as well. I love Used Cars.
Yo, you have the entire West Coast
Robert
video.
Meyer Burnett Library.
You would like it. You would if you
I know I would.
I think our tastes in film is incredibly similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm capping off my disc collection at 2,500. So I'm trying to. It's probably gone. I'm probably like at 3,000 discs now, but I don't need. I figure I have this problem as I get older. I'm thinking, okay, how much time? And this, I don't think this is morbid. I think this is more practical. How much time do I have left on this planet? You think, okay, if I could watch all of my movies one more time, and if you think about it, if you could watch a movie a night, so that's 365 movies if you watch one every day for a year. So it's going to take me, and that's every day for you. Nobody can do that because you're busy. You do things, but so what is that? So my collection would take me 7 or 8 years to get through if I watched one movie a day. Well, let's expand it out to, let's say it's one every other day. So it goes from 7 years to 14 years. There's no way, with the time I have left on this planet, I'm ever going to be able to watch all my movies again.
All your films.
So it's like
that's a lot. But I mean, unless you devote an entire day, like that's this basically like pushing. Like, it's like, you know, when you hear workouts, 2 or 3 a days, you would have to actually probably watch at least 3 to 4 films a day.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much to get up to where you're trying to get before. But then again, you don't know, Rob. You might live to be 200.
That's true. Yeah, in this day and age with gene technology, maybe they'll figure out a way. But I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd want to live to. There's a certain cutoff point where like I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm done now. I think it's how far.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
The Popcast says, "Holy shirt, Rob, you don't sleep." No, we take naps. We take naps.
Yeah, we take naps.
Rod Thunderheart sent in
Rod
Thunderheart is here, ladies and gentlemen. Rod sent in a very generous super chat. Rod, thank you for that. Hail RMB. Lael, is it Lael or Lael?
Lael. It's like you lay down and you take an L.
So it is Lael. I was just saying Lael
Lael.
because like Lael Lowenstein. So it's Lael. I've been saying it wrong,
Lael.
so I'm gonna say Lael from now on. Okay. Hail R&B, Lael, good chat. Yes, movies from the 70s made you think. Cinemasons at the beginning of Ant-Man says, when Hank Pym slams that guy's face into the desk, that sounds like a terribly mean thing for him to say, but realize he's just, trying to provide exposition to the audience. And that's just it. Storytelling is no longer smart. It doesn't cause you to think. You aren't forced to examine life or people's situations. Right. Superhero movies are just digestible popcorn flicks. Now, here's the thing. You know, the thing about superhero movies is inherently they're about characters that don't exist. So there's an element of fantasy to them. And I get it. Like if you watch Taxi Driver and you meet Travis Bickle, the anti-hero, and he's a character that could exist out into the world. So I think that there's, especially for certain filmmakers, the idea of a superhero movie somehow has no value because it's not really about a human being anymore. You're even though I would say superheroes are just like they're just like westerns, they're just like cop thrillers, they're just like legal thrillers, medical dramas, whatever. They're just a different form of that. And even though they're fantasy and escapism, I look at something like Winter Soldier, which is a movie about the surveillance state. Like, how far is surveillance going to go? Like, SHIELD or Hydra was going to launch this sort of... they wanted to be able to kill people from states away with those helicarriers. And it does, even though it's a comic book movie, you know, it's we've always had escapist entertainment. And I think one of the things... for me, like when I watch Infinity War, I've told people this, I can't believe that movie even exists. I love Infinity War and Endgame so much. I'm like, you know, those two movies together are two of my favorite science fiction fantasy, and it's so I can't believe when you're watching Ebony Maw fighting against Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Spider-Man shows up and the Obsidian Order. I'm like I can't believe I'm even seeing this. I can't believe they've made a cohesive universe where all these characters exist, and I'm watching it happen because to me it's so much fun. It is nostalgia. It's my childhood because I read Marvel comics, but they've done them in sure. Are some movies better than others? Yeah. Is Thor: The Dark World sort of disappointing? Sure. But it's still a lot of fun to watch. I don't watch it and go, that movie sucked. You know, I don't think about, you know, you watch like a Warcraft movie that's bad or something. It's not like that. It's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think, you know what, when I look at Marvel films, and like I said, I mean, not to take up too much of that time, but I think one of the biggest things is you got to think of film in general. Like, you know, film, when they're created, like a lot of directors, they go the route of, okay, I'm going to put this film out. I want to see the crowd's reaction, but at the same time, I'm new to this. I want to actually put this out. I want to see how well it may evolve. film evolves. We're starting with that. With right now, we're in the comic book era where these films, yes, we've seen them for the last 20 some odd years now. Like we've been, basically submersed in this. But at the same time, you got to look at the simple fact that films, they do evolve. The storylines do evolve. If you're a comic book reader, you'll know that a lot of these films that we see, there were some really tough subject matters in the books that were tackled, that were deep, that you probably picked up a book, a trilogy, and read it the whole way through and didn't actually reach action until like maybe the very end, because you were in that story. You were submerged in that story because it was deep. That's the thing with film, it does evolve. Like, to say that there's no substance in Marvel films, you can't, I would actually challenge you to basically go back before you watch the film, but then go back and read some of the books that these films are based on. And you'll see that, okay, they're making an attempt to give you that entertainment, but it's like so much, there's only so much that you can put on film, from an actual book. But again, these films are evolving. Yes, they're entertaining, but you're going to see it, and I guarantee you going forward, and I think they're even going to start this with Eternals. When you watch Eternals, you're going to see how well films do evolve, where the subject matter itself, we're talking about individuals who have lived through time, through events and times, that they've watched people die and they had no way, they couldn't stop it because they swore an oath and they just couldn't do it at that time.
Oh, I think Eternals is I've heard buzz that it's the first time Marvel thinks they have another movie that can compete at the Academy Awards on that level.
And I believe it.
And I think people are going to be really, it's funny because there's all these naysayers going, they're saying this about Shang-Chi, oh, that movie's not going to make any money and this, that, and the other thing, but you can't bet against Marvel. Though Shang-Chi was wildly entertaining, and I think that Eternals is going to be a really thoughtful examination of the fact that they're dealing with the end of the world, not a Thanos snap, but the fact that the world itself is going to come apart because of Celestials inside of us, is inside the planet. And Earth is going to be judged or whatever, and this thing is going to be born and destroy Earth. That's why Earth was created to be the egg for a Celestial. And if that's what they're going to deal with, and the fact that Thanos' snap has accelerated this process or bringing everybody back, I think it's going to be a really interesting existential examination of what. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know anything about it, but I think that's what we're going to get, and I think it's going to be interesting.
Bill Barkley says, anyone seen season 4, episode 1 of Magnum PI? And Davide Olivia Pinheiro says, everybody loves Blowout, and Body Double is kind of underrated.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think we did Body Double on Whining About Movies, but yeah, that Body Double came out after Blowout. But yeah, that Body Double's a lot of fun too. I was a big 70s and 80s De Palma fan. Then he kind of went off the rails, but yeah.
Silver Kino Gary also says Showgirls. A lot of people hate on it, but he says compared to movies now, it's awesome.
Yeah, well, and I have that on 4K, by the way, because I love Paul Verhoeven. But yeah, I think that all of Paul Verhoeven's movies are worth watching. A lot of people. I love Starship Troopers. And a lot of people didn't know what to make of it when it first came out.
Yeah.
And it's. I mean, I think in a way, we're almost living in. Even though we get all this great content, we're living in sort of the post-cinema era. In that a lot of what gets made now, like I watched the trailer for Red Notice, the new Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot movie, and I'm like, I really hated it. I'm just like, maybe it's fun, but to me, it's not really. It could be a breezy, fun movie, but there was nothing in that trailer that I'm like, oh, I have to see that. Yeah. I always have to have some kind of an intellectual hook, even if you're going to watch a sleazy New York horror movie like Basket Case. Basket Case has a really interesting, like this deformed little twin brother that this guy has and carries around in sleazy New York movie, and Belial kills people, and I want to see that. Like, how does the brother deal with his deformed little creepy? I want to know. That's something I want to experience. But so many movies now especially a lot of the movies that are made for Netflix, aren't interesting from an intellectual standpoint. Now, this next question, this next super chat, Lance Bergsven. I'm probably getting it wrong, Lance. Your last name. Good to see you here. What up, Rob and friends? What are your thoughts on the Netflix original film, The Ritual? Okay, I love this movie. It's become one of my favorite horror movies of recent years, and I don't ever hear a lot of talk about it amongst fans of the genre. I have to say there were two movies that I saw on Netflix that I can't recommend highly enough if you're a horror fan. One is The Ritual, and all you really need to know about that is some friends are going into the woods. That's all you need to know. And the other movie, like The Ritual, it's not like The Ritual, but I love is a movie called The Invitation. And all you need to know about The Invitation is it's about a dinner party in L.A. That's all. Don't read anything about it. Just watch it. Just watch The Invitation. Don't even read if the synopsis comes up on Netflix. Keep your eyes shut. And if you don't know anything about The Invitation, just watch it. And I'm telling you, it's a movie that takes place in a house at a dinner party. Just watch The Invitation. Both of those movies. That's a great double bill too. Is The Ritual and The Invitation.
Okay.
Good call. Good call. And Alex Cruz says, Rob's. I'll ask you both these. Rob's thoughts on Foundation. I haven't heard you talk about it yet. I've seen the first 2 episodes. I loved it, although I don't know what's going to happen at the end of after episode 2. I'm like, wait, what? But it's, my God, I've never seen a TV series where every dollar is on the screen like that. I mean, they have spared no expense making that. I can't wait to see where it goes. I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes. It's really heady sci-fi, and I'm enjoying it. What about it? Have you guys seen it?
I loved it. I haven't finished watching episode 2 in its entirety, but what I've seen of episode 1 and part of episode 2, I'm hooked. I can't wait to see more of the Foundation series. I think they did a fantastic
I have to watch
job.
it. I just haven't. I didn't sit down and watch it yet, and
It's-
I'm going to watch it this weekend.
Yeah, you got to watch it.
Yeah,
it's good. Yeah. So Alex, good call on that one. 200 Watt Studios says, speaking of the Exorcist director, Rob, are you aware? Are you aware that To Live and Die in LA is coming to 4K? I love this ongoing joke. I never want this joke to die.
No, is it Kino Lorber? Is it Kino Lorber?
Yeah, it's Kino Lorber, but this is 200 Watt Studio. It's Tom Jr. Jackson who popularized this, but it's been picked up by other members of the Post-Geek Singularity, and it is hilarious. Yes, I am aware. I have an obsession with To Live and Die in LA, another movie that William Friedkin directed. Exorcist, French Connection, Cruising, To Live and Die in LA.
Yeah.
I just got his movie Blue Chips. He made a movie about basketball that Shaquille O'Neal's in. Nick Nolte and Shaquille O'Neal.
Penny Hardaway was in it.
Yeah.
It was,
He directed that too when his wife was running Paramount. It just came out on Blu-ray last week, so I picked that up. Stubble McShave, our friend Stubble, says,
Hi, Stubble.
is there anything you're interested to see from New York Comic Con next week? For me, it's the Wheel of Time panel. Maybe we'll get a new trailer. Gosh, Stubble, is there something about Wheel of Time that you want to see? I can't imagine why.
I interviewed Stubble just this past week.
Oh, well, so I got more of it. I got to put the rest of your things up because I got Foley sent me a new link today. So I'll put that up and get that
I
up
think
there.
Ben, also from Cinema Gulp, might have sent you some stuff as well. I don't know.
my God, I can't wait to New
I'll
York
put that up.
Con.
Yeah, well, are you guys going?
Yes.
Lael, you're going?
I'll be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I normally go on Thursday nights, but we're gonna go up Friday morning. We're gonna leave early Friday morning. We'll get there. We'll be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Nice.
I cannot wait.
I'll be there Thursday and Friday.
Oh, then I'll see you then.
We will.
I cannot wait.
Oh, it's so wonderful. I'm so excited. Of course, I want to see figures. I want to see cosplayers. I just want to be able to walk around and just kind of enjoy a con that we haven't been to. It feels like it has been years, actually. For me, it's over 2 or 3 years. So I'm excited for this layout.
Today I did get, because we got, and you probably got the same thing, notification by email. I guess it was from ReadPop or whatever about the COVID protocol.
Yes.
How you have to basically, if you don't have your CDC card, as proof, or your with your ID, then I think you have to sign up through the web, or is there something you have to actually sign up for?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how everyone gets in that day.
It's going to be a long check-in. There's going to be people who don't have their information or they can't retrieve it, and they won't be admitted in. It's going to be a very different atmosphere for that.
Yeah, it is going to be a long check-in. That's why I say what I'm going to do is, like, I actually have my CDC card. Me and Toy are going to get it laminated tomorrow, and we're going to put it on a lanyard. So when we walk up, right here, we have it. Let's go.
That's a really good idea. I've been thinking about getting my vaccination card laminated as well.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we have to have booster shots, if I should wait until I get the booster to then get it laminated so they can put that down on my card too, that I've had a booster shot.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of waiting to see, because the thing is, like, I think because right now, because I actually had the Moderna.
Me too.
So I don't, and the thing is, I don't know if the booster's out for that yet. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, right. So that's what, I'm waiting. But again, I have my vaccination card ready to go. So
Yeah.
The
lovely Connie Sang, who, by the way, is
Connie.
she's made sure that she's kept John Campia and I in headphones and things, and she was able to get us when we gave away the sound bar for the 400th episode of the show. She's very, very cool. I wish I had met her 20 years ago. We would be fast friends. She's very, very cool. She says the score for Somewhere in Time is a top 5 for me. I think that's John Barry, the great John Barry, who did all the great music for, movies like Body Heat, his great jazzy score for Body Heat, and of course the Bond movies. So he's great. But you are correct, Connie. The more I learn about her, the cooler she becomes. Lynch Designed sent in a super chat and says, "You guys are the best. R&B, Lael, and Blood of Heroes with Rutger Hauer was awesome. Have you guys seen it?" Yes, that movie had an original title.
Yes.
The original title was Night of the Jugger, was the name, because Juggers are the... And I believe that movie was written and directed by David Peoples, who was a writer on Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I like that movie. On the cheesy side, I love the Ice Pirates when I was a kid. What are your guilty pleasure movies?
Oh, Ice Pirates.
Oh, boy.
with the dancing alien embryo,
Oh, my God, yes. And then they had the living herpy. That was incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
So do you guys have guilty pleasures?
Oh, man.
I liked Dead Alive. Like, it's ridiculous, but I love that film
it's great.
So much.
It's Peter Jackson. What's not to love?
One of my guilty pleasures is what it was. You know what? And it's probably a film that was so beautiful, but people who watch it probably nowadays wouldn't really understand it. Brazil.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I love that film, man.
It's great.
I love that film. It was so beautifully. It was shot so well. I mean, that's probably one of my guilty pleasures.
Yeah, you shouldn't. You don't have to call it a guilty pleasure, because that's truly a great movie.
It is.
It is.
It is a great film.
Connie Sang also says that she liked The Cell and none of her friends did.
The Cell was directed by Tarsem, and it's a serial killer movie that's unlike any you've seen. It's unbelievably beautiful. But I don't think it really holds together, but it's an incredible film to watch. It's
I just wish they didn't do part 2. I wish they didn't actually do a sequel to it. They should have just did the first film and left it the way it was, because it was like the cinematography in it was incredible. Like,
incredible.
The visual was credible.
Yeah.
But don't do a sequel, especially if you can't validate its success.
You
can't. Don't do that.
No, but that film, it's an incredible movie.
It is.
I think my guilty pleasure, I've said it before, is an Italian Star Wars ripoff called Star Crash. That I love Star Crash, or as it was known, The Adventures of Stella Star. Yeah. I mean, it's David Hasselhoff's in it. What more needs to be said?
Yeah.
I mean, it is not. I mean, what I love about it is it was Italian, and they rip off everything in it. John Barry, Mr. Somewhere in Time, also does the score for Star Crash, which is great. Maybe the best thing about the movie, but it's not a good movie, but I love it so. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love
Yeah.
it. I couldn't recommend anyone else watch it, but it's great. Rod Thunderheart sends in another super chat and says, "Hail Rob, Lael. I was so in love with Catherine Mary Stewart in Night of the Comet. She's from Edmonton, Alberta. I have been to Edmonton. They have a great mall there." Yes, she was great. I mean, the girls in Night of the Comet were great, and Kelly Maroney.
That was a great film. Yeah, that
it's
was
a lot of
really
fun. Again, I had Shout Factory put out a really nice Blu-ray of that film. It's great. Jordy Lyons says, "Let's talk seriously about Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Did she find her first feature writing credit in a Kellogg's Cornflakes box?" Phoebe Waller-Bridge is getting a lot of. She, of course, is the star of Fleabag, and the star and writer. And she wrote. I think she's one of the co-creators or writers on Killing Eve. And then, of course, she came in and wrote for the new Bond film, No Time to Die, and she's in the new Indiana Jones movie. Yeah. So, I mean, I really like Fleabag a lot, and I haven't seen No Time to Die yet, so obviously I can't wait. I'm seeing it in 5 days.
I liked Killing Eve. I thought that was a spectacular series, and feels like it's gone in a direction that I haven't really seen a lot of shows go. So, if you want a unique experience, I would say watch Killing Eve.
It's going to be interesting to see her in Glover as, especially, are they still doing that rendition of Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
I don't know. I mean, I know that
I haven't heard anything since.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. And you know, apparently, they're with the rumors are to be believed, she's going to be the new Indiana Jones, like take over from the. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
Homo erectus says Drugstore Cowboy is one of his faves.
That's a great Gus Van Sant movie with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix. That movie is a great movie. Criterion put out a nice version of that too, on disc. That's a really good movie. Monsignor Larval Jones, M.D., or is it Larvel, says post 9/11 apocalyptic depression trilogy. Start with District 9. Then V for Vendetta, and then Children of Men.
Yes.
The post-apocalyptic depression. I like that. Yeah, that good call. Can I say hello to the Richard? Hardest working man behind the scenes. Thanks. No, you can't say hello to the Richard.
And the Richard also, he said something in the chat. I just want to say it. He says, "Oh, snap. I have used cars on VHS."
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yes, I love that film so much.
It's so good.
I love it's a part of my childhood I would never ever get rid of. I love that film so much. Like literally, it is so good. It is so good. Yeah.
Glenn Mark goes on to say, "Who liked Luc Besson's The Fifth Element? I remember most of the color palette. I love The Fifth Element.
Love The Fifth Element.
You know, are you green? I love Chris Tucker in that movie. I mean, he's he's a combination of Prince and whatever.
Yeah.
It's so Corbin Dallas. Corbin Dallas. He's on Flossed in Paradise. I don't know why. That movie's like a heavy metal. It's a heavy metal issue come to life.
I wish they could bring. We need another Fifth Element. We need something as fun and as exciting and Bruce Willis style kind of action in there. Little sexual tension between him and Mila Jovovich. Like it was, really, really good.
Well, they attempted the closest thing we would have got to that, even though it really didn't translate well to the audience and people didn't enjoy it. What was that film called? It came out a few years ago. I keep forgetting the name.
Well, he did Valerian,
Valerian. That's what I was
he did that.
Valerian.
That was sort of his sci-fi. The problem with Valerian was it was really miscast.
Yeah.
You know, is it Dane DeHaan and Carla Delevingne? Is that how you pronounce the last name?
Yeah.
They just looked like they were little kids.
Too young.
I like that movie though.
The movie was great, but it was just they were too young. They casted. If you would have paid, if you would have actually had a more mature looking cast with those two characters, it would have probably translated a tad bit well or better. you know, and you know, Rob, there were, like I said, there were 2 hot toy figures that never seen the light of day.
Never saw it because they thought it was going to be a big hit.
Exactly.
But they made the prototype, you know, they've got to make like 10 of them. They should just put those up for sale, like for people who want to buy those.
Right next to their Prometheus figures.
Oh, God.
Right.
Another guilty pleasure movie that I wanted to mention is Queen of the Damned with Aaliyah. And, you know, she's kind of like slithering through the film and devouring like everybody in her way, like everybody. And no one is, you know, kind of like off limits to her. I thought that film was brilliant.
And Stuart Townsend plays Lestat, doesn't he? In that movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's too bad what happened to Elise. She was really good in that.
Yeah, she was amazing. I think she died right before the release of that film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that and she did such she looked terrifying in that film, but she looked beautifully terrifying in that film.
Beautifully terrifying. I'm coming right to you.
I think one of the great tragedies, though, is that they didn't make the Vampire Lestat after they made Interview with a Vampire, because that's my favorite Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles book. I love Vampire Lestat, and after the end of Interview, when Tom Cruise, you know, he's there at the end, I was like, you got to make the Vampire Lestat now, and they didn't. They just went straight to Queen of the Damned, which kind of bummed me out. But now they're going to do the TV series, so maybe we'll finally see Vampire Lestat. That whole vampires rock star story will play out.
I hope so, because Aaliyah is a hard act to follow. You know, she really kind of made an impression in that film that I don't, you know, hasn't been made since Interview with a Vampire, really, in my opinion. But.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
She plays such a strong character in that film. Mm-hmm. Like, just, you know, exotic, alluring. Like, she just, like I said, beautifully. It's like, when I look at that film and I look at her portrayal, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get bit, but would you possibly, like, I'm cool with that. Like, so just, you know, just take a little bit off the top. I'm good with that. Like, seriously, like, that's actually made you just want to be.
Okay.
She was incredibly talented.
Since you brought it up, I'm going to ask you both. If you had the opportunity to become a vampire, would you do it?
If I could have a kid first, yes. Like, just like in that story where I could have a bloodline that, you know, but yes, I would do it. Yes, I would do it.
Lael?
You know what? Because I live such a nocturnal life anyway, like literally, probably. But the thing is, it's like when I think about it, I'm like, well, man, like living or having to live so long past the ones that you love. You know what I mean? If I could be a vampire with zero emotional connection, then yeah. But having emotional connection, it would be like, oh man, you're gonna die soon, and I'm gonna live longer than you. So why should we fall in love? As a matter of fact, let me just bite you. How about that?
Well, I have to tell you, I would do it. I think, yeah, of course, and that was like what The Hunger is actually all about. You know, Marion Blaylock is so lonely, so she takes these lovers for hundreds of years. But I would do it because I would love to live 1,000 years. I would love to see where humanity would go. It bums me out that I'm not going to, you know, that I won't get to see the solar system conquered. Like, are we ever going to go to Mars? Like, I would love to.
Just to see that, to witness that.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think, how cool would it have been to live, I mean, you'd live through the Dark Ages and all that, but I would love to have seen 2,000 years of human history play out. Yeah. And if you're immortal, like, you can't die. You just have to avoid getting a stake through the heart or somebody to figure out who you were. Yeah. But nowadays, I mean, now you could actually be a vampire and make it all work. You'd have to reinvent your identity all the time, but I think it'd be a lot of fun.
If I was a vampire, there would be a lot less worry in this world, honestly. There would. Literally, I would target certain individuals, and people would never have to worry about them again.
People need a lot of killing.
It would be a lot of killing. But no, I mean, that is interesting. Like, to be able to live through time, to see evolution, to see things. It's just that, like, you know, you said that you would want to have a kid if you can have it. I don't. If I knew that, I would probably not want to, because I would not want to see my child die. I could not watch that. Like, I really couldn't watch them live and then die, to go through that entire life, and me have to just kind of relive those moments. Know that because you basically become a living oracle. You've chronologized. You've captured everything. Like, you know everything through history. You know, sort of like, I think Rob's a vampire, because he knows a little bit too much about a lot of things. Like, literally, now that I think about that, Rob,
So
are you
that's
sure?
what it is.
Don't tell anyone. But you know what? I would love to like go to a country and live in a country for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like spend like and learn the language, you know, become and imagine like 400 or 500 years down the line, you would have lived all over the world. You know, you would know something about every country. It would just be so much fun to experience. I mean, obviously, it would be kind of a bummer that you couldn't like eat regular food and drink wine and all that. That would become tiresome. Like the sensual pleasures of eating and drinking would be lost. And I'm still undefined about, do vampires get aroused? Like,
Yes,
as a male
they do.
vampire, I would think, yeah, you drink blood, because I'd still want to be able to, you know, have sex with beautiful women all over the world as a vampire. if you couldn't, that would not be fun. Like I wouldn't want.
Man.
Because can you imagine? I mean, you could go everywhere, and meet.
Man.
That would be the whole thing. It would be so much fun. And like you,
It
Lael,
definitely changes.
If you know what, if I could be a
priorities.
vampire, I'd want to be Jim Carrey in Once Bitten. If I could be that type of vampire,
wow,
yes,
that's a good pull. That was what Lauren Hutton was. She was
Lord,
Lauren Hutton.
yes, she was gorgeous.
Yeah. That Once Bitten, and then there's Grace Jones in Vamp. You know, I was thinking about those two movies together.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be kind of neat. Like I watched The Hunger, and I'm like, I want to be those people. You know, I want to go to cool clubs in New York and pick couples up and drink their blood and take showers with Catherine Deneuve. What's not to love? I mean, we watch the blood off each other. Yeah.
Oh man, like, that's an interesting question though. Would and I'm looking at a few of these, like a lot of people in the chat saying like, yeah or no or whatever. That's interesting though. Like, that's interesting. If you know how rich you would be, bro? Like, literally how rich you would be as a vampire?
Oh, it would be. Then I don't have to worry about pre-ordering hot toys. I just,
Homo
order 'em.
erectus says, if you lived 1,000 years, you would try all the types of love.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think that you would be like, I think that you would eventually lose any kind of inhibitions you had. Like, if you, like, it would be interesting. Like Miriam Blaylock, she had both lovers. She had male and female lovers because she was beyond gender. I mean, she wasn't worried about those kinds of things. She wanted companions.
Yeah.
And Bill 4393 says, whose neck would you be biting, Rob?
I don't know. I mean, it would depend. Like, I think as a vampire, like Lael said, I would target people to sort of affect social change.
Yeah.
You know, like that would be the way to do it. And
that there was a vampire who did that, right? A woman, a movie where she kind of did that.
Was
right?
that Innocent Blood, the John Landis movie?
Yeah,
Innocent
that's
Blood,
the one.
with
I think it was
Lefem
Innocent
Nikita playing the vampire.
Yes.
And Pearl, however you pronounce her name. I mean, I think it would be interesting. Like, what would your obligation be? And as a vampire, you know, you could do things like I would try and fix things that were, like, if I could clean up Fukushima because I'm a vampire and I could go in there and radiation wouldn't affect me. You know, if you could, I would like to do that. Like, I would try and figure out solutions to problems.
So it's interesting that you mentioned Fukushima, or let's say Chernobyl, these sort of Superfund sites. And I kind of want to get your opinion about horror films that are associated with nuclear waste or that whole thing. Like, what's your take on that? Because there are a lot of games, video games that focus on, you know, the world being destroyed
Fallout.
because yeah, and I think there's Chernobylite. There's a lot. That's a huge theme in video games. What do you think about it as a theme in horror films and in science fiction?
Well, I think the idea of a post-apocalyptic landscape is after the fall of man is an irresistible sort of a story. I mean, there's a movie that not a lot of people talk about. It's a low-budget science fiction movie from the mid-'70s called A Boy and His Dog. And it stars Don Johnson, and it's about this wasteland, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but Don Johnson, he has a telepathic dog named Blood, and they could talk. The dog has a voice, and they could talk to each other telepathically. And it's a great, I mean, I think that we have a fascination all the way back to the idea of the apocalypse in the Bible. The four horsemen of the apocalypse and the world coming to an end, and then living in that post-fall, the fall of man world. I mean, I think that there's an irresistible and nuclear Armageddon is something that we created in the 20th century. It's something that didn't even exist. It's so monstrous. The idea that, I mean, it's weird now to think about, but we lived through the Cold War, and I remember growing up, that was one of my big fears, was being in a nuclear apocalypse. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. And Lael, you remember all those post-apocalyptic films from the 80s. Like it seemed like there were hundreds of them. Did you have any that you thought of that stood out or that you still kind of think about?
I mean, of course, Beyond the Thunderdome. Like Beyond the Thunderdome, any Mad Max film, for me, I thought it was just like, okay, it would be cool to live in a world where you can have a souped up Camaro with like fences and gates around you. Like you could just have in leather pants. Like you could just make leather pants look so damn good and watch half naked women just walk around you pretty much all day like it was nothing. It was just like, yo, I mean, if you could just dodge kind of pissing a few people off and dying every now and then. But I mean, that was just the cool take before post-apocalyptic films became like the dread of the bane of your existence when you watch them now.
Yeah.
As opposed to them, they were so stylized back in the 80s. It was like, yo, who didn't want big, like, I'm like, wait a minute, this was post-apocalyptic and everybody had the big 80s hair and it was nicely done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. If I lived, talk about Beyond Thunderdome, I'd go hook up with Anti-Entity.
I'm sure
Tina
you would.
Turner. You're just a raggedy man. Yes, I am Anti-Entity, and here I am. Here I am.
Yes.
Who run Bartertown? Let's do it
That
together,
series
baby.
It evolved from the Road Warrior to Mad Max. It was truly, something that felt as if it was a continuation of the series, but they were distinct enough that they were able to still grab your attention, even though they kind of hit on the same themes.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, it's like when you watch them, the thing is just like with us is just like we lived so many decades where we've seen those stylized films and we enjoy them to like now when you see those post-apocalyptic films, it's like, man, everything is just so sad now. Like it is really, you know what I mean? Like extremely sad. Like when we talk about like post-apocalyptic and films with like, with vampires, I think it was one that was just released recently. It was like The Girl with Gifts. Was that?
Oh,
Yes,
The Girl with All the
Girl
Gifts.
with the Gifts.
But
With
that's a zombie. That was a zombie movie.
A zombie, yeah.
That
like
movie's really good. That has a
is.
different take on zombies. It's more of a
like when you think about it, it's just like the tragic portion of that film is the simple fact that, okay, number one, she's one who is slightly like, what is it? She's not infected, but like she's not affected by.
Yeah.
It was, the premise of it was so nicely done, but it might slide under the radar for people who might see it and just label it as just another typical, zombie film.
Well, I think
it does have a lot of substance.
Zombie movies are inherently also post-apocalyptic because the zombie apocalypse that destroyed civilization as well. And there's also movies like Cormac, the adaptation of The Road, Cormac McCarthy's book, The Road.
Oh yeah,
that book was one of the most. I mean, I read the book and I saw the movie. I'm like, Jesus, I don't like the horrible idea that mankind we're just such terrible people, and after the fall of civilization, the only people left are just the most horrible versions of us. And it
exactly.
You know, but there's something, you know, I never want to live in a post-apocalyptic environment.
Yeah.
My greatest fear is the loss of civility. You know, somebody one day just comes into your house and rapes your family and kills you. And that kind of thing, it's always scared me. And I think that's why, because it always happens.
They always say
Mankind,
basically in something like that, the worst part of a post-apocalyptic era is the human condition.
yeah, the human condition and the fact that we lose all of our sense of civility and that evil prevails and human life is cheap and that, because I still believe that humanity, we are here. We are here to know the universe. I've always believed that the purpose of mankind, or the purpose of any sentient being, is the universe is indifferent.
Yeah.
But we are not. And we're a product of this universe. And I really believe that the purpose behind about intelligent life or sentient life is to know the universe, because there's nobody here, there's no one else to see it. And whether you believe, if you're a religious person and you think about, like, obviously our vision of the universe is very humanocentric. It's very earth-centric. When we think about the heavens, I mean, if you think about how vast the cosmos is, we still think of the earth as the center of it all. All of our religion, you know, God's watching us. Really? In the entire infinitude of the entire universe? You think that God might be busy over there a couple of times? You know, it's just like...
Yeah, right.
But I think that one day we're going to find out that the universe is probably teeming with other life forms. And that's what we're supposed to be doing, is to know the universe. And, you know, I make it a point on my show. I talk about the fact that there's only one of each human being on the planet Earth. Every human being is unique. I mean, I know there are twins. I know Paul and Simon. But even you are also individuals. And think about that. In the entire infinitude of creation, there's only one of each of us. And that would mean that every human being is the most precious resource in the universe, because there's only one of you. And when you're gone, you're never coming back, unless they clone you, I guess. And yet we're so eager to hurt one another, and we're so eager to not treat one another correctly. And I'm like, it's because we can't think beyond our circumstance. You know, and if we
you're robbing people of their unique contribution to the world, man. Like, literally, like, when, you know, people who want to wish harm and death on another individual, it's like, yo, they are, you know, a very important part of, you know, just this world's evolution. Like, you know, everybody plays a key role, and, you know, to have that type of mindset, it makes no sense.
Yeah, but that's what I always think about, the tragedy of whenever there's an accident or a terrorist attack or something, the people that lose their lives, you're like, well, who knows what that person might have wrought, like their children's children. In 150 years, that person whose life was lost was supposed to create more life, that in 150 years somebody was going to cure cancer. And somebody else will fill that gap, but think about every time someone is lost prematurely, what that could mean to the future. And I obsess over that. You know, I obsess over, like, you know, at the end of Schindler's List, you find out how many people that Oscar Schindler saved. You see their descendants, and like how many thousands of people now exist in the world because of what Oscar Schindler did. And every time we lose a life prematurely, I always think about that. Like, my God, what does this mean for the future that no longer is going to come to pass? You know, and I think about that more often than I probably should. Just like I think about, it bothers me. Like, one of the great things about being a vampire is how many people you'd actually get to meet. Because you'd go to fabulous parties, and like you said, you'd eventually get rich, so you'd accumulate all this cash, and you'd have to in order to stay alive, and you'd trick out, you'd have the coolest pads and buy the greatest antique furniture. It'd be awesome, but you'd also get to meet all these fabulous people that you never would get to meet. I mean, imagine having 1,000 years of friends.
Yeah.
But Robert, there was a Star Trek episode that touched on the notion of a society where, and of course this is an extreme example, but a society where every single individual filled a specific purpose. And even the loss of 10 people meant that it would be difficult for that society to continue on because their role was so specialized, so specific, that losing them meant that it would be sort of like going back 1,000 years, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's very important. Obviously, you know, we're all here for a reason.
Yeah.
I always say that, you know, it's true, we're here for entertainment, we enjoy things, but as far as I'm concerned, you know, our role here is to sort of like, we're in the business of human beings and enjoying what it means to be alive at this time and entertainment. So, you know, losing a huge amount of people like that, and even one, you know, I'm not trying to magnify it or make it any less, but it is a blow to our society, but it also means that it has an effect over everyone. Yeah. So, you know, I know, you know, I think that's what a lot of these stories, like where you have a mastermind and he wants to do something evil and he thinks that the outcome at the end is going to be what he expects. Like Thanos is an example of this. He thought after the snap, everything would be fine. And then, of course, what do you get? Sad Thanos. There's a reason, you know, doing these heinous acts does not always, you know, give you the end result that you expect.
Especially what you're looking for. Yeah, it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good point.
It's so funny we're having these. This is a great conversation. Rod Thunderheart says, "Am I the only one who liked the Adjustment Bureau?" I like the Adjustment Bureau.
You're not. I loved the Adjustment Bureau. Mm-hmm. I loved the and I loved just the narrative behind it. That stream, like being able to, you know, someone's life is guided by just that rule that, okay, you're supposed to. This is the purpose. This is what you're supposed to do. But then, like, you are that person, like, well, no, like, if I love this woman, I should be able to be with her because I want to. Like, it shouldn't be guided by the principles that you think, okay, this is what's going to make something successful, and I have to be along this road. Like, I loved that film. Like, I can watch it every day. Like, literally.
It's great. And again, I believe it's based on a Philip K. Dick story, the same guy who wrote Blade Runner. Yeah, and I love the premise of it, you know, and I love stories about fantastical, like there's these organizations of fantastical beings or humans that are removed. They're more advanced, like they work for the angels or whatever, and they're actually plotting. I like that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm actually kind of working on my dream film project. There's a movie that I want to make for 30 years. And I have the script for it, and it's too expensive. I don't know if anyone would let me make it now, because I'd have to do a little bit more to build up my credibility before I could make it. But it has that element to it, you know. There's but the Adjustment Bureau is like, I'd like to believe that that's true.
Yeah,
that there really is an Adjustment Bureau.
Just walking around, just making sure. Nah, you don't want to eat that.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to eat that. You need to go somewhere. You're not supposed to meet her. She's not going to be the one for you.
Yeah,
and yeah.
And
then we look at it like, you know what? Maybe I needed to have someone like that. You know what I mean? Along my journey, maybe if they would have guided me in a different direction, and if I'd have had an inkling that, well, maybe that I was supposed to do this and not that. Yeah. Wish.
Yeah, you know, one of my favorite movies of all time is a German film directed by Wim Wenders called Wings of Desire. And it's set in Berlin in the late 80s, before the wall fell. And it's about angels. And it was remade in America as City of Angels with Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage, but that movie's not nearly as good as Wings of Desire. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And in the movie, it follows these two angels. There's angels everywhere, and what angels are there to do is observe humanity, and they can hear our thoughts. And like if you go to the library, that's like the angels hang out in the library and just listen to what people are reading, and watch. They watch everything. And this one angel decides he doesn't want to be an angel anymore, and wants to become. He falls in love with a woman that he's been looking in on, and it's. A lot of it it's very philosophical. It's very lyrical. It's not like a typical narrative movie, because a lot of it was written. The director co-wrote it with this German poet, but I was like, I would love to believe that there are angels all around us all the time, just observing. Their job is to observe humanity, and I just love that idea. And even though it's a complete fantastical construct, it was still it's the idea that there are these beings that are observing everyday life, that you matter to them. And I like that. I mean, I want to believe that we live in that kind of a world.
That we live in that type of world and it does exist. Me too.
Yeah. I mean, because everything, whether art, all the stuff that we like, movies, books, music. I mean, think about that. All of that, like a song, a chord progression. I was watching a video that a guy made. It just dropped about Don Davis's score for The Matrix. He made it like 2 days ago, and he was explaining. He knows all about music theory, so he was explaining the score through music theory and was talking all about this. And I'm like, man, I don't. I wanted to be Miles Davis, so I was playing trumpet in my band, and then I realized I am never going to be a jazz trumpetist like Miles Davis. I'm just not going to be that guy. So I stopped playing the trumpet. But I still wish I was musically inclined. I wish I could play the guitar or something. But music theory fascinates me. The way it works with mathematics and chord progressions, and this is a really interesting video. I don't know who made it. It popped up in my feed, but it is. I encourage everybody to watch it. This is why I love YouTube, because shit like that pops up all the time, and I'm like, wow, how would I ever watch somebody who knew a lot about music doing a video about the chord progressions of Don Davis's score for the original Matrix? Mm-hmm. Thank you, YouTube. But it was really, really good, and it was like 15 minutes. And I think to myself, isn't it great? Yeah, isn't it great? We not only do we live on a planet where somebody on YouTube makes a video about the musical chord progressions in the score for the Matrix, but that we have the Matrix itself to have that music in it. Like the Wachowskis wanted to do something that combined anime and all this other stuff. And that even the studio's like, we don't quite understand this movie, but they certainly seem to know what they're doing. And that we live in a world where people made shit up. Just imagine it. All of our art. I just happen to love movies it's my favorite art form, but whether it's sculpting, whether it's dance, whether it's music, all of this is born out of the human imagination, and I'm stunned by it. Yeah. I'm always staggered by what humanity can do. And it just seems like there should be more of that, please, and less of the others.
One thing that YouTube has given us is exposure to more creators. That's something that I think is one of the most important gifts about YouTube, is that we are seeing more than we have ever before, and especially in more niche specific areas for creators and seeing all that talent. And I think it's fantastic. It's such a great way for people to show what talents they have, and there always is an audience. It's because it's 24/7. That access is available, and we've never had a situation like that. This is the first time in history that that's a possibility for anyone who wants to create. So if anything, that the invention of this medium that we're on right now has really changed a lot for so many of us.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I know both of you because of YouTube. Mm-hmm. I like I would not have ever been. There'd be no way. Like even on our toy streams, I'm talking to somebody. Justin is in Melbourne, Australia, and we're talking to people all around the planet at one time, and about Hot Toys.
It's such a unique experience. Like people who you never thought that you would actually meet in a lifetime. Like, and that's what I always talk about. Like, it just everything is birthed from just sheer will of putting yourself out there. But it's more noticeable on YouTube because you're able, and it's a platform where you can reach out to individuals. You know what I mean? You never know what the response is going to be. Like, I've only been live streaming now since I would actually say February. January, February, that I've actually been doing it. And I've been able to connect with so many individuals who I've never thought. I mean, Rob, I've watched you for years. And I'm like, yo, so to be able to get to this particular point, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all contributing. It's all because of the contributions that YouTube has afforded. Like some of your known, like even upcoming incredible directors are found through YouTube. Like, this short films, some of, people who do scores, arts, deep fake was made popular really through YouTube as well. So you know what I mean? Like it is, it's endless possibility through YouTube. Affords people the opportunity to create and to be seen and to have their contributions in the world. I love that.
Well, what made you decide to start live streaming?
You know what it was? It was okay because again, Toya, she knew my passion for collecting, and my passion for just, nostalgia. And she was like, why don't you just start by creating a channel where you just review? And I was like, well, there's so many different reviewers out there. I'm not. She was like, no, just do it. Like you have the love for it, build it. She lives by it, build a dream, build it, and they will come. So she was like, just do it. So I started doing it that way first. And that's how I created the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube page or the YouTube channel. And then from that, I started, I just started getting in certain groups, and just following certain people from their Facebook pages. And then I just felt as though I just continue on with it. I got invited on Paradox Nerd with PJ and Will Foxification and Optical 20. And then from there, I was like, you know what? I really want to do this. I really want to do it. And so I just basically just took a leap of faith and just did it. And here I am now. Like, and again, it's like, it's crazy because it's like, yo, I watch. Okay, John, don't hate me, man, but come on, you have to understand that one of the most entertaining factors of having the John Campion show is having Rob on because it's the banter back and forth. So and that's one of the reasons why I watched it, and then seeing your love for just film, knowing your film background, what you've done, and everything, I watched that and I'm like, yo, who would have thought that this is where I would be? And it's all because of YouTube, and it's because of the simple fact that I had the will to do it. And now I'm meeting everybody. I'm meeting you, and as we can have these conversations again, if it wasn't for YouTube, we wouldn't have these conversations now, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, and I'm astonished by what I love about it is, people are always telling me, like, I've got friends that I grew up with that are my age, and they're like, why are you having so much fun all the time? They're, and I'm like, it never really, I don't think of it in those kind of terms because I've liked the same stuff my whole life. But what YouTube has just done is it enables us to find each other, and we can celebrate. Like, look, having a Hot Toys obsession as moving later in life, collecting action figures and stuff is not something that I ever thought I would be sharing in a public forum with anybody. It's something you do on your own. But you then with YouTube, you suddenly you go to other YouTube channels like Justin's channel. Like, I watched Justin's collection for a long time. Like, I didn't know Justin, and I because Elizabeth and I, every time Justin would put up a video, I had to watch it. I was like, oh, and it never occurred to me that I never thought about our age difference. I never thought, I'm like, this guy just does the best figure reviews on YouTube. And then now suddenly we're all streaming together. I mean, the guy lived in Melbourne, Australia. I'm like, how am I supposed to meet? Well, but on YouTube, it's like, well, here we go. And what's funny,
right next door.
and to me, I consider him, in a way, like above me. he's the A-list. He's like the Olympic athlete toy collector. And while I've been collecting toys a lot longer than Hot Toys and figures a lot longer than he has, but he's got the most. Like, he's the best person. Now, that doesn't bother me. Like, I'm like, that's fine. I love what he does. So what I find really interesting is that, like, somebody will say, well, yeah, but Rob, you work in Hollywood and make movies and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have that many Hot Toys, and it's, and so it's like I have my interests, but a lot of people don't. I know there's a lot of people in the industry or people that I know that are like, man, you waste a lot of time on YouTube. And I'm like, yeah, but I got a movie in theaters right now that I produced, and it's an animated Netflix show that I worked on, and we got seasons 2 and 3 that are in process of being made that I'm also working on. So. And when I'm talking about Hot Toys, that's a part of my personality that has nothing to do with working on movies or TV or whatever. But it's important to me. I like action figures. I have my whole life. And so I think a lot of people, when it comes to YouTube, find it hard to understand why people spend so much time doing these kinds of things. And And I'm like, to me, it's totally enjoyable because my interests are so compartmentalized anyway. And I like the specialization, like going on a toy stream for 2 hours, whether it's with Az or whether it's with you guys, and we can literally sit down and have a serious conversation for 2 hours about what Hot Toys is going to do for the next 5 months.
Exactly.
I mean, because I'm thinking it anyway. And normally, if I didn't have YouTube, I would be thinking about these things. And Elizabeth's like, "What's on your mind?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm actually thinking about the Hot Toys release schedule." And she's like, "Really? That's what you were thinking?" I'm like, "Yeah."
This is a very special time for collectibles because what's happening now is that we're in an era where movies are coming out and we're getting collectibles for those films, but we're also getting collectibles for movies from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Exactly.
We're getting, not and we're talking about high quality reissues in this case. We're getting figures that were never issued before. We're getting sets of things that we've always wanted, and we're finally seeing that. This is a very special time for collectors.
It is. And you're meeting so many different persons. Like it was crazy because today, shout out to Lynch Design. He's actually in here. Yesterday he actually received his Grogu in a co-pilot chair. He sent me a picture. He's put it on. So I was talking to him today. The nights and evenings have been busy for us, a lot of us lately.
Yeah.
And he sent me a message. So listen, if you want any t-shirts done or anything like that, just hit me up. I'll definitely hook you up and help you out. And I was just thinking, I was like, man, I've been looking for like someone to help me out with merch. So I was like, well, he sent me a few like prototypes of his designs and stuff. I'm like, yo, this guy is amazing. Like he does amazing work. He's like, Leo, if you need anything, I got you. And I was like, at all this time, I was searching for individuals or just scaling through just people just to see who I could actually link up with. And to link with this individual and know that, he's a very passionate guy, a very good guy, having a conversation with him, talking back and forth, knowing his life, him knowing mine, but just able to really link with these. And this is what we're afforded through collecting. We're able, it's such a broad community. And collecting, I'm sorry to say, it is the new thing. It's the new, like collecting is the new black. I'm telling you, like it is that incredible because I'm telling you, like you're open and exposed to so many. And the thing is, being a geek is popular right now. Being a nerd is popular right now because it's a safe place. Number one, people want to know certain things. And on top of that, we are a plethora of information. We are people's entry and gateway into nostalgia, fantasy, everything. So when they meet us and we're able to have these conversations, these are thoughts on the minds of individuals who've wanted to have these conversations for so long, but just never had a platform. Well, we've given people platforms now.
Yes, and not only have you done that, but you've also guided them in the right direction, where to collect, what to expect, reviews, how to maintain your collections. Do you want to pose your figures? What do you do if you have to sell a figure? All of these questions about how to maintain this collection, which has monetary value. It's a legitimate, practice that, for many of us, it's part of our enjoyment, but there is the idea that we have to maintain it, a balance of having your collection and what you're doing from day to day. These are questions that, I think that forums like this answer for so many people. And also tell you what you need to know. It's like, by the way, if you buy this figure, there's something you should know about it. Maybe the articulation isn't what you expect, or, just so you know, the head sculpt is not what you might be expecting. And I think it's important because when we were growing up, we used to have catalogs where we could look at toys and see very specific things, but we just don't have those catalogs anymore. We don't have access to that anymore. We can't even go to the store and really look at toys the way we used to when Toys R Us was around. So this, we kind of needed this medium to kind of make a judgment for ourselves as to what we want to collect and why,
And that, what was crazy about that, Rob, is that I'm watching these episodes, and like I said, I'm normally watching John Campy, and it was just like, sometimes I'm watching it when I'm driving to certain places, or if I'm actually going in with a client or something like that. And the first time I looked and like, wait a minute, I was like, this motherfucker collects Hot Toys. I was like, wait a minute. And I started listening. I was like, it's not just me. So I'm watching. And then like every time we talk about films, you was like, you know what, John? and that Hot Toys was, I was like, you damn right. This is where I'm supposed to be. I knew it. There was a reason why I love this guy, and here it goes.
Well, and it's funny because that's now become sort of this ongoing thing. Whenever I can work that into the conversation, and you know, when I first started with John, I would bring a toy on and show a Hot Toy off. You know, and that was back years ago when I first started doing these things with John. And when I, for the 100th episode of Collider Heroes, I made a video. It's on my channel of my Hot Toys collection at the time. Like it was back in, I think in 2016. And it's still 5 years ago. And it wasn't my whole collection, but it was what it was in my office, you know, and at the time. And what I think is most important about these, especially streams about toys, they're just joyous. Like a lot of the time, you know, it's funny because I hear a lot of people, like Justin's always going, people are always complaining about everything. And I'm like, there is a lot to complain about, I guess. But I mean, even a bad figure is much better than what we used to get. And I think about all of the very interesting things that are available now that we can get. It's incredible. Like, they're making new models from 2001: A Space Odyssey. They're making a 1/48th model kit of the Ares 1B ship, and it's like this big. And they're making a 27-inch Pan Am Clipper from 2001. I've loved 2001 my whole life, and I'm like, now in 2021, they're making giant model kits from. You can get the Star Trek models that are coming out, the Eagle Moss, whatever. You can get someone's making almost anything that you want now.
Beautiful. Yes, and Rich's Star Wars comic books and video games says he loves collecting, and Bloodsport 1 says Hot Toys Power Loader. I guess. And 200 Watt Studio says, did Rob miss my super chats? Did you?
No, as a matter of fact, no. We got one because 200 Watt Studio asked about. He said, you know, the director of The Exorcist, he's got To Live and Die in L.A. coming out in 4K, and we haven't got to his next one. We got more stacking up, so let's get through these. Lynch Designed sends in a nice super chat and says, any of you remember when a theme song or a car were just as big as the characters and the cast themselves? The Rockford Files, Knight Rider, Starsky and Hutch, Chips, The Fall Guy, Cheers, and Welcome Back to Kotter.
Ghostbusters.
I salute you, Lynch Design. Hell
yes.
I mean, remember the Welcome
Rider.
Oh yeah, or Welcome Back, Kotter. Welcome back.
Yes.
The dreams are dun, 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 dun,
exactly. That song, it just and they, you know what? That song they play on commercials now. I forget what commercial it was.
Yep.
But they play that. It is the most amazing song. You know what I mean? But it just brings you back to those moments. But yes, Knight Rider, A-Team. You know, when you think about these films, or these shows that had the cars, the theme songs.
Yes.
Hey,
Gattaca.
Exactly. Dukes of Hazzard, the greatest American hero. You know, when we watch basically these, like exactly. True. Like, and that's what I'm surprised.
Wonder Woman.
Exactly. Yo, as a matter of fact, Hot Toys, give me 6-scale figures. I'm talking about updated 6-scale figures of the A-Team now.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the new film.
Because they were convicted of a crime that they didn't commit.
Exactly. Give me the Knight Rider. Give me Michael Knight and Kit. That would go off. That would go off.
Yes. Anything David Hasselhoff.
Exactly. When Kit fought Goliath. Come on, give me that.
Yes.
Dude, I'm just playing the Starsky and Hutch theme song right now. I used to love that. The pinnacle of 70s. Starsky and Hutch and SWAT had the great theme songs.
Yeah.
It was like kind of jazzy and, you know, just that was a cool theme. That was cool. We need something cool like that.
You had to be as cool as Huggy Bear.
Oh, yeah, Huggy Bear.
So good.
Yeah.
But, you know, and it's funny, they would play those songs like on the radio. The theme from SWAT was a huge hit.
It's a great song. It's a jazz song. It's a jazz song. It's a cool sound. And I remember
It's so good. I mean, and you know, those you used to be able to get, like, I used to have CDs of TV theme songs. I don't know whatever happened to those, but I loved all that stuff.
No, it was wonderful. you know, just that whole era of being excited, hearing the song for your show coming up, and that excitement built up when you heard it, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
gosh, I miss
That's
that.
see, Lynch sending us all back. Talk about nostalgia, you know.
You took us so far back, yeah.
Alex Cruz says, "What do you think about Grace Randolph?" I watch Grace Randolph. I don't know her though. Would love to see you promote Tango Shalom on our channel and talk movies. Well, that's not a bad idea. Maybe, you know, the VOD release is happening at the end of the month. I don't I don't know Grace Randolph. I've never streamed with her. But she's certainly a YouTuber that's been around for a long time. I have a lot of respect for her. I mean, she gets a lot of there's a lot of hate directed her way. Which I don't,
and for reasons that I can't really understand. I mean, the thing is, bro, she's good at what she does as far as the reviews. I mean, it's just her take. And the thing is, it's like people have to respectably, you know, they have to be respectful when it comes to people's opinions, and especially when it comes to you reviewing films. And she's been doing it long enough, and she's been lucky to, you know, to be able to, you know, interview certain individuals. She's been doing this for a while. I watch her show often. She does a good job.
I think she does a good job too.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give like respect. She busts her ass.
Yeah, exactly. She really busts her ass doing it. You know, she really, really has. And a lot of people, like, it's, again, the thing is, especially in this YouTube realm, even though we talk about the good, we have to also recognize the bad. And the thing is when it comes to competition, you know, people look at things instead of just looking at it as one big community that can be successful as a whole. This, you know, we want to compete. It's too much competition. Like, you don't compete with the next person. You basically congratulate them, and you work hard to get to where they are. So I just think that, you know, with her, she's worked hard. She's placed herself in a position where she afforded the opportunity to enjoy some of the things that she's done. And that's it. Yeah.
And I think Charlie the Unicorn says she has 1 million followers. Is that true?
Yeah, I think she does.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about people like, you know, Chris Stuckman, who I've watched Stuckman for a long time. I really enjoy his reviews. I don't always agree with them. Stuckmanized. I like that. And Jeremy Johns, you know, I watched Jeremy for a while. He was working for Collider. Nicest guy in the world. Also, big Hot Toys collector.
He's fun. He's a Hot Toy collector too, bro?
Yep.
Bro, he is fun. His review on the Mandalorian. Me and Toya go back and we watch this constantly. His review on the Mandalorian episode with Boba Fett. If you go back and watch that, you will laugh your ass off. It was one of the funniest things I have ever seen, and that kind of got us through the whole pandemic. It was so funny. If you get a chance to go back and watch that episode.
I will. You know, he's just a great guy, and he's meeting him in real life and hanging out with him, he's that guy, you know, and he that's another thing I think what people forget is, like you pointed out, Lael, that's you're competing against yourself. You know, like I've been doing this now for 2.5 years, and my channel's got almost 42,000 subscribers. Well, when I go stream with Az or I stream with Justin, I mean, they've got 350 or 300,000 subscribers, but they never say to me, well, you know, I'm not going to stream with you because you don't have as many subscribers as me. I've never heard that ever. Like, I don't even think that way. Some people have said to me, well, why do you stream with these people when they don't have as many subscribers? I've never, ever, like when people ask me to come on their channel or something, I never go look at how many subscribers they have. I'm like, yeah, man, let's have a conversation when I can do it. And it's more about, well, do I like these people? Are they cool? That's pretty much it. Like, if we can have a good conversation, let's have a good conversation. But, you know, there's a lot of people that look at it like I could be doing a lot more. If you wanted to do, you can bolster your channel and really turn it into a money-making proposition if you wanted to. And while I like doing what I'm doing, I could do a lot more, but I like what I'm doing. I like going to other people's shows, and, you know, I like meeting people.
It's just clearly fun. It's meeting people. It's sharing ideas. It's having people that you're able to meet that, you know, pretty much have the same interest as you, and you grow that way because, like I said, they may have ideas that could help you along as well. So it's just like, you know,
there's a great deal of collaboration.
Yeah, it's a great deal of collaboration, and you're meeting so many different personalities, you know, and just being able to have these conversations, like, it's like I can when I'm here and I'm around you guys, I smell nostalgia.
Yes.
Literally, I can smell the times that I've actually.
It's so
You
good.
can. It feels so. It feeds the soul. It lets
Yeah.
you know that you know what, you're not alone. Like seriously, and I'm pretty much sure everybody in the chat feels the same way. And that's why they're here. That's why they
Well,
exist. That's why there's 138 people in here right now,
yes.
more so watching. Because
Adding to
they
what
feel it.
Lael is saying, the other night, Echo Base. This is maybe a few weeks ago. Echo Base Network showed a version or had a watch party of Iron Eagle. I think it was Iron Eagle, right? With Lou Gossett Jr.
Directed by Sidney Furie and
Okay,
Jason Gedrick.
And we watched it. Like, it might have been maybe 20 of us watching it. And, you know, one of the things that was interesting is that there were people who were, you know, there who had never seen Iron Eagle. You know, they'd never seen the film. But then there were a few of us who had. And at the end of the film, we were discussing it. And I said, I watched this film because it feels so good after you watch this film. Like, you feel so good after seeing a film like this. And that's part of our nostalgia. Like, remember going to see a film and you felt good afterwards? Like, it's impossible not to feel good after watching that film. And I think we want to hold on to that. And if we can bring that to the younger generation too, you know, I feel like we've achieved something.
Yeah.
200 Watt Studio, speaking of 200 Watt Studio, asks, he says, come on, Q the Winged Serpent is awesome. Starring Michael Moriarty and directed by Larry Cohen. I love, and I think the great Dave Allen did the stop motion creature effects work on that. Q the Winged Serpent. I love Q the Winged Serpent. I love Larry Cohen's movies. He made some crazy batshit movies. Yeah. He made It's Alive. He made God Told Me To, which if you haven't seen God Told Me To, there's a wacky movie from the 70s. He made Island of the Alive. I mean, the stuff about a killer dessert that like eats you from the inside. And Q the Winged Serpent. I mean, Larry Cohen, and he made one of the first blaxploitation movies in Black Caesar. You know, a Jewish filmmaker making a blaxploitation movie back in 70s New York. You know, Larry Cohen, man, and then he wrote big movies with big stars in them as well. He had a really crazy career. There's a great documentary called Citizen Cohen about him that came out a couple years back. That's definitely worth seeing.
Okay.
I also, and I'm sorry, I also love I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. I love that film.
Yeah.
That warms me inside. I love that film.
You know,
Bug Spade. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Larry Cohen also directed the movie Original Gangsters, where they brought back like Fred Williamson and Richard Roundtree and Pam Grier. And
Pam Grier was in it, yeah.
When I went and saw, I was so excited to see Original Gangsters because they brought back, you know, all the blaxploit. Fred Williamson was Slaughter back in the 70s, and Slaughter Goes to Africa. I mean, I love those movies. The greatest. So I go to the Cinerama Dome to see Original Gangsters. I went to the first show, and there's like 6 people in the theater. Like, nobody cared. And there's this moment where Fred Williamson comes out of a Learjet, and the thing comes down. He just steps out, and he's got his cigar. And all of us who were in the theater at that time, we all knew why we were there. And as soon as he showed up in the theater, the 6 of us that were watching this movie, and we were all sitting all over. We weren't sitting close to one another at all. We all just started hooting and hollering because Fred Williamson, he's such a badass, and you know, nowadays a lot of people don't know those movies unless they get remade. Like, people know Shaft because Sam Jackson's Shaft.
Yeah.
You know, but that film was great, and Larry Cohen directed that as well. I don't know if anyone went and saw it, but man, that was a fun time in the movie theater. Twin Flicks asks if anyone has seen The Fall from Tarsem. I have. I own that movie as well. That's a beautiful movie. And I believe he actually shot that movie he was doing really expensive high-end commercials. And when he would go somewhere like around the world to shoot a commercial, he would shoot some of The Fall, which I thought was pretty funny. I think that's how that movie got made. Well, 200 Watt Studio also says, I got my first Star Trek Coda book. That's the first that came out this week. I'm actually in the middle of it. Where should I start with the shared continuity as a new reader? Well, it's interesting. The 3-part Star Trek Coda series, there's one came out this week, comes out in October and then in November. I mean, you have 20 years of books to read before Coda. The beginning of the Coda book actually has a few pages that explain the whole timeline of everything. It would be hard to tell you where to go because there's so many books in the timeline. But there is a Star Trek timeline of the post-Dominion War continuity. But there are certain things like I would read David Mack's books. But this is a long question to answer. Probably wouldn't be the best venue for it, but I'll have to talk to you offline about that. Which ones you should read? But you can read Coda and just read the beginning because they catch you up with the timeline at the beginning. But then you'll read the timeline and go, oh, I want to read that story. So yeah, it's good.
Mike Elliott says, we recently lost the great Mario Van Peebles, king of the black exploitation filmmakers. And Connie Sang says she loves The Fall.
Melvin Van Peebles.
Melvin Van.
Yeah, it's the father, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his dad.
Yeah, it might have, like sometimes it's autocorrect. It'll just like change I'm guessing that. But
oh, here's a movie people don't know enough about or watch: New Jack City, that Mario Van Peebles directed.
Yes.
With Nino Brown, Wesley Snipes in a star-making turn as Nino Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that movie.
Yeah, come on, man.
I want to be a New Jack Hustler.
New Jack City. Chris Rock was in it as Pookie.
Yep. Pookie.
You got Ice-T who played a fallen detective. You basically had who else? What was it? Judd Nelson was
Judd Nelson's in there.
Yeah, like
Vanessa Williams, the other one.
Yeah. Oh man, it was an all-star cast of so many individuals that was in this film. Yes. You had that. You also had Posse. Remember Posse?
Oh yeah, he did that after the Western.
He did Posse afterwards. So yeah, great films.
Classics. Yeah. New Jack City. In terms of, I love that movie. I mean,
it set the tone for other films going forward, maybe for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
In that genre, if you will. Whatever the genre that was, the culture, let's say hip hop culture.
Yeah,
I think
it was
job.
basically in that New Jack Swing Teddy Riley era back.
Yeah,
So it was a lot going on around that time. So
yes.
Oh man.
Stub McShave says, I saw in the Hollywood Reporter that they would have more POVs in the new. They're remaking. Well, they're doing a new version of Shogun, the miniseries Shogun. It's one of my favorite things that's ever been on TV, but they're doing a new one. So Stubble says, do you think that means subtitles when they talk Japanese? I hope not. I will probably miss the Orson Welles narration. Me too. I don't think they should, because the whole thing about the original Shogun is that this character, John Blackthorne, lands in Japan, and the Japanese characters, the Shogun and the samurai, they don't speak there's no subtitles. So you, as an audience member, are kind of picking up Japanese as the main characters learning it. It's one of the great things about it.
Yeah.
Charlie the Unicorn says Wesley was favorite role still for him was the original Blade Runner. Or I'm sorry, Blade.
He's great. He was great as the Daywalker.
Yes.
I mean, that's look, Blade and The Crow, those two movies are to me the genesis of where our modern comic book movies really started. Both the Crow, Blade came out I think 4 years after The Crow, but they were The Crow's a comic adaptation, a really good comic adaptation, beautifully done, and then Blade also. They make a great double bill, by the way. The Crow and Blade.
Blade and the Crow.
Talk about how talented Wesley Snipes, was, and his physical conditioning. Just as an actor, he had such a beautiful body, and just even seeing him on the screen was just delightful. The camera loved him, and I just remember that about him. And it's one of the things I just love about him.
Oh, and to me, seeing him in New Jack City, he's just ferocious.
Yes.
I mean, that was a star-making turn like no other. He was, and even after that, he did things, other movies at Warner Brothers, like Passenger 57, which is not a great movie, but hearing him say things like when you play roulette, always bet on black.
Bet on black.
Yes.
I love all that. That was awesome. The movie's not great, but he was great in it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, he was wonderful.
Yeah. So Stubble, you and I are going to watch the new Shogun very closely. We'll have to see what they do. I'm curious.
Definitely.
Rod Thunderheart goes on and says, "I absolutely dug Jean-Claude Van Damme's movie Cyborg. I think that's definitely a better one of his better movies."
He kicks through the glass with his leg, right?
Yeah.
The car door window, and he has to get the person who's in the car, and then he just those kicks were just no one has been able to really match what I think he was able to achieve, and he just was so wonderful on camera, and I love Jean-Claude Van Damme. So.
Yeah. Hard Targets coming out in 4K. Mm-hmm. Rod goes on to say, "That's what I loved about the Adjustment Bureau. It blows the mind to just think about what if you were at work a few minutes early or a few minutes late.
Yes.
You might meet those people at the Adjustment Bureau." Mm-hmm. Glenn Mark from New Zealand says, "I love French comics. Luc Besson also took on The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc-Sec. Yes, I have Volume 1 and 2 and the Valerian comics. I actually have The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc-Sec. That's I like that movie, and you're absolutely right. I think that film is good.
Exactly.
I enjoy it." Richest Star Wars comic book and video game sent in a super chat. Oh, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Rod Thunderheart says, "Who would you meet? What was supposed to happen?" Are you asking us who we would meet? Because in the Adjustment Bureau, if you guys, let me ask you this: if you could meet anybody in the world right now, could be a celebrity, it could be a sports star, anybody. If you could meet anyone in the world right now, who would you want to meet and hang out with for a night?
And this is someone who's alive right now, or just anyone?
Someone on the planet Earth, could be anybody. Who would you like to sit down and hang out with for a night? You get to have great dinner, and then you go out for drinks after. Anyone on the planet Earth.
If I had to pick
can we choose more than one person?
Yeah. Why not? It's a dinner party. Sure.
Okay. I would okay. So this is in the realm of if it was to happen, or if it could, I would sit down. I would actually want to sit down and have lunch with Brad Pitt. Just be like, "Yo, how the hell did you get that cool, bro? How did you get so damn cool? And what was your inspiration for, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? That role was incredible." I would have to basically say secondary. I would actually want to sit down with Halle Berry and just tell her how she was definitely my 90s crush.
How many times did you watch Swordfish?
How many times did I watch Swordfish? How many times did I watch Boomerang? How many times did I watch, a Jungle Fever? Just those particular films.
Yes.
And I would actually top it off by just, who would I? You know what? Last but not least, I would actually just want to sit down and just watch John Williams write an entire score. That is my dream, is to sit down in front of John Williams and just commend him and salute him for his contributions on film and film score. Literally, I love John Williams. His film, his music really encompasses what it means to feel and to really allow sound to connect with you and take you to a place that you have never ever felt. It's his film scores are crack to me. Literally, I swear, it's
I love it.
You can't get enough. I can always recognize John Williams films and his scores.
Sure.
And it's just always Christmas time is the perfect time to listen to John Williams. It is all week. Just listen to John Williams and you'll just feel so much good, so much better. Literally.
Love it. I love it. What about you?
Well, of course there's a bunch of so it's going to sound kind of silly, but I definitely want to have dinner with Paul Verhoeven and kind of get all the secrets, so to speak, and talk about how he uses certain elements in his films. So that's something that I need a year. It'd be great to kind of shadow him and kind of understand his concepts and kind of walk away with some of that, knowledge. But if I had to, let's say, pick a science, an actor that I wanted to hang out with, it's gonna be Superman. It's gonna be
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill.
yes, yeah. It's gonna be him. So and you know, I probably wouldn't even be able to speak. Because he's so extraordinary, you know.
I don't know if you saw, I think the person that, and this is only because it's fresh in my mind, I don't know if you saw online that Mick Jagger just went out. They were there to play in some city. I don't know where it was, and he just went out to a bar by himself, and no one knew it was him. And this happened like 2 days ago. There's a picture here. Let me call it up. I can show you the picture. And no one at the bar knew it was Mick Jagger. And he took this picture. Let's see. Mick Jagger bar photo. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so it's in USA Today. The Rolling Stones, arguably the greatest rock and roll band in the history of rock and roll, are back on tour right now, playing huge football stadiums across the U.S. Tonight, they're in Charlotte to play Bank of America Stadium, where the Carolina Panthers play. Last night was a night off for the band, and Mick Jagger, one of the greatest, most recognizable singers in rock and roll history, decided to check out the town and popped into a small bar for a drink. And he shared a photo on Twitter. And Mick Jagger wrote that he was here. I'm going to put this picture up on I'll put it up on the chat. He wrote, "Out and about last night in Charlotte, North Carolina," and here's the photo that he shared. Let me get it, and you'll be able to see it on the stream. So here is the picture of Mick Jagger. It's you can see it now. So he went to this bar, and there he is, just standing there. And no one, if you look at the other people, no one even knows he's there. And so, and I just love this, that these people just didn't even know that he was there. And Mick Jagger would be the person that, for me, I think I would want to hang out with him, just because, you know, they were huge in the 60s, and he's seen... Mm-hmm. He's been afforded a unique position in terms of history. I think the Rolling Stones are still one of the great rock bands of all time. And,
oh yeah,
you know, and yeah, "Sympathy for the Devil" might be my favorite rock song of all time. And just that, I can't even imagine that. What a missed opportunity! You're in a bar, literally. In that picture, you see that there's people that are within feet of him. He's there by himself, and no one knows that he's there. And it's just like, wow. But I think Mick Jagger would be the person I would most want to just talk to just right now. I mean, it would have been Prince, but he's no longer with us.
Well, technically speaking, it could be anybody, so you can put Prince on the list.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that I would have loved to have, but you know, he was, by all accounts, he's not the kind of person you sit down and go, "Hey, man, so how's it going?" Like, he wasn't that kind of guy, and he is my favorite rock musician of all time. But I would be curious to talk to him about his work ethic and his process, his artistic process, and things like that, because it would have been fascinating to do that. So, so there you go, Rod. And Stub McShave says, "I'm still waiting for Swag Props to send you the book from The Name of the Rose. You'd better wear gloves when reading through it." I don't know if Swag Props is going to make that book, but that would be fun to have. That would be fun to have. I wouldn't say no. Kinky Sphincter says, "Pow pow pow, hot pot about the Carnage hot toy." Did you watch Justin's video about the Carnage toy?
I did.
I didn't watch it yet. Well, I saw you talking about like just behind the scenes at I think
at Secret Base that the pictures Ryan took.
Ryan took, yeah. I did watch that.
It looks great.
It looks incredible.
It's
huge, bro. It's
huge.
Like, it is literally huge. So yeah. I can't wait for that bad boy. Even though it's going to possibly be 2 years. But I can't wait.
That's one thing I think we all wish we could speed up is the time from announcement to the
Yeah,
time to delivery. Even if it was
production.
like 8 months or something,
Yeah.
I'd be all right with it. But 2 years, you're kind of like,
It's like, yeah, like, come on, man. Like, don't play with my emotions because then you're waiting
yeah,
2 years for the production of the actual figure. And once it hits production, then you got to wait another 6 or 7 months just to get it in hand, depending on who you get it through.
Yeah, I know.
Ah,
Drives me crazy.
it's nuts.
These are certainly first world problems, but
I
hey,
think
Yeah.
I think that future generations will be like, they had to wait 2 years. Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
long. There people will be saying that.
Yeah.
oh yeah, but it's true. It's absolutely true. But it looks great. CBD Gummy Giraffe says, Rob, have you watched The Many Saints of Newark, the Sopranos prequel movie? I have not. Did it drop today? I don't know if it did.
Yeah.
I think it did.
I
Yeah,
think-
because
oh.
Timothy
Yeah,
Peter
it dropped.
Jackson said he was going to. I think he said he was going to see it, and I think he saw it. I think he.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought I heard HBO ordered it to series. That I haven't heard. Do you know if that's true? I don't think they have ordered it to series, but maybe I will.
No
Just
idea.
announce a holodeck version of To Live and Die in L.A. before Christmas of 2363. And Sanford and Son, remember that? Stay classy, SoCal. Sanford and Son had another. That's another theme song. I remember watching that when my dad loved Sanford and Son, so I would watch that. This is a good question. Lance Bergsvin says, "Do you think the popularity of being a geek in today's society the standard going forward, or will that change? Perhaps the term itself will change." I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that the idea of being a geek has always been something that's been in our society, but became more solidified when there were movies like Revenge of the Nerds and maybe even Porky's and things like that. And as it's evolved, obviously geek culture has come to the forefront and we're seeing more of it. But the geeks were always there, like we always existed. This wasn't something that just suddenly popped into existence. We existed all this time, and now that we have this forum here where people are actually visually seeing us,
Yeah.
I think they're realizing just how cool we actually are.
That's the thing. And that's my point. It's the platform. The platform that we actually have now that we're able to share ideas. You're able to see different collectors all over the world. And then, like I said, the way the IPs that we actually see on film have really glamorized this whole thing, and it's made it completely popular. Now you're starting to even see, like, even through YouTube and interviews, you get a chance to see actors who you would have never thought before in a million years would be collectors. You're seeing that they are collectors, and you're like, you know what, this community is a lot bigger than what we actually think. It's just that we have a platform now. So I think that it is, like I told you, it's the in thing right now. And on top of that, I don't think it's going. Look, all these years I've been collecting, I've been in this. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's getting better and better, and it's a release, and people are starting to respect it more and have more respect for individuals who are into it. So let's just keep it alive. It's going. It's moving, and it's never going to stop.
And another thing I want to add to that, Lael, is that we have the most beautiful men and women, and the most talented creators.
Yes.
Creating material for the things that we love.
Exactly.
And, clearly there's value there. We're making the entire existence of these IPs that is actually influencing other films like Free Guy, or Ready Player One. A lot of what we're seeing in, let's say, in our genre films is making its way to other genres. So the influence is there, and I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, I mean, and geek culture sort of it all kind of it exploded. I mean, I watched it happen in my own life, going to Comic-Con and watching it become more and more popular, and a lot of things. There was a confluence of things. One of them was video games and girls becoming gamers, and watching girls watching a lot of anime in the 90s, and going to the comic book store because they were buying Neil Gaiman's Death. Or Sandman. And so that was a huge deal. I watched that happen very quickly. And there were always girls involved in Star Trek fandom, but there weren't, not to this extent. I mean, when I first started going to Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, it was mostly dudes. And
Yes.
then nowadays it's not. It's 50-50. I mean, you see gaggles of girlfriends
Oh my
going together,
God.
and
Man,
it's
do you know how you don't listen? You don't know how beautiful it is to me to meet and to have a lady in my life that has just enjoys it. She has been talking about Comic-Con now for so long, and now that we finally got like our tickets and we got everything in, she's got her t-shirts ready, she got all her everything that she wants, she's gotten ready and she's ready to go. And the thing is, it's like I wouldn't have thought a million years that I've always talked about how I wanted to meet someone just like me. And actually like I said, to have that or to share that with someone, it's a big thing. And a lot of women are, really involved in this community, and they're just as involved as a lot of men. Is just the simple fact that, it's not, put it this thing, it's not a sacred thing anymore. It's not sacred for just, one, gender of individual. It's a huge thing across the board for both women and men to enjoy, and I'm just so glad to see it finally.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, it just wasn't. Girls did not watch, like Star Trek the way that it was just a different thing. We were socialized differently. Now it's that's not true. Now people are growing up. Girls and boys are growing up watching animated superhero stuff, or watching anime, or playing video games. So there's an equality there that didn't exist when I was a kid. I couldn't. There were hardly any girls that I knew growing up that were Star Trek fans. I don't think there was one. I don't think I knew any. I'm talking about of my own peer group. I used to go to Star Trek conventions, and then we had a big local Star Trek convention in Seattle, and I would see women at those events, but not as many as there were dudes. And now that's completely not true anymore. And so you go to Comic-Con, and now you have multi-generations of families, grandparents, parents, kids, boys, girls, everyone's into it. And so the world used to be, the geek world was very, very small. And that's why I call the community the post-geek singularity, because it happened. The geek singularity occurred, and now we're living in a world where everyone is a fan. Everyone. Moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, young, old. Everyone loves all this stuff, and they've grown up with it, and now there's so much. There's nobody who isn't a geek, because look at the biggest things in the world. Who would have thought that the biggest movie ever made is Endgame? I would never have thought that. If you asked me that 20 years ago, do you think an Avengers
we would
movie
actually see that?
it would be the most successful movie of all time?
I want to say something about that, and I want both of your opinions on this. For me, the turning points would be Christopher Reeves in Superman, because he's so beautiful. Like while he embodied the character, this man is stunningly beautiful. And we're seeing someone playing a role of a superhero that geeks love, who is extraordinary. And then for me, the next turning point was the Watchmen movie. Because we were seeing superheroes that were not necessarily perfect. So it was kind of like, it kind of flipped. What are some of the turning points you think, because everybody saw Superman. You weren't a nerd if you saw Superman. Everybody saw that. Maybe you were a nerd if you saw Watchmen. Maybe you were. But, I think there are some turning points in movies. Maybe Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine might be one of those turning points.
Well,
because he was a popular,
I think the biggest turning point was Star Wars. When Star Wars came out, the thing about Star Wars was there had never been anything remotely similar to it that had ever been made. And yet it took cues from science fiction novels like Dune and things like that, but no one had ever thought, like, Dune was never going to get, Jodorowsky notwithstanding, Dune, no one could make the great science fiction novels. We didn't have the technology. And Star Wars, they made shit up, like the motion control camera, so they could do the model photography. It didn't exist before they made it up. So, and Star Wars, it was the most, everyone went and saw it. That movie, it hit with the force of a nuclear bomb going off in the culture, and suddenly it gave, no one disliked Star Wars. the general public. And I think, and then Superman came out the year after in 78. And then by 79, you had the people that Alien had been greenlit, Star Trek the motion picture, Disney made The Black Hole. And that's sort of the beginning. We were off to the races, and things started to really change. Because, you know, girls had Princess Leia. And so girls could dress up as Princess Leia. And there had already been, you know, boys dressed up as superheroes. You could get superhero costumes before Superman the movie came out. But even then, you know, Superman the movie's a romance. You've got the Lois Lane, Christopher Reeve, the Superman romance. So women, again, it was accessible for everybody. And so was Star Wars. And that, I think, it was a slow buildup. But by the time you get to the early 90s, with the influx of, like, I remember at Comic-Con, you go to the masquerade, and there was 10 groups of girls dressed up as Sailor Moon, the Sailor Moon characters. And that was a huge deal. You know, and that was the first time I'm like, wow, there's now girls are and that was their gateway drug into anime. Which led to video games as well. So
definitely.
And it's great. It's great to see where it's all gone. And now
Neil, what are your thoughts?
I think, like Rob said, Star Wars was definitely a turning point because it opened the door for so many possibilities. You know, like you said, in film, you know, and then knowing that this was an idea. This is something, you know, we talk about it now, how, you know, now Hollywood plays it safe. They do a lot of remakes. They don't like to, you know, new ideas, create something that's completely new, fresh. We're seeing less of that now. It's more of remakes, you know, sticking to what's safe because this is what's going to actually sell, instead of taking a chance thinking that, well, nobody would ever actually see this and give it a chance. George Lucas did that. You know, he basically took a chance with something that he believed in, and just ran with it and stuck to his guns and said, look, this is my vision. This is how I see it. This is something that I want to produce, and I'm just going to take chances. Look, everybody knew back then that there was a possibility, a high possibility, that something like that would fail. But it was the simple fact that he took a chance to do it. We take chances not because we think that everything is going to be successful. We hope that it will be, but it's a simple fact just to say that we've done it. You know what I mean? Look, if you move across the world, if you move like when I took the chance at moving to Sydney, Australia, and living there for like 10 years. I did that because, like I said, I took a chance to see how successful I could be, and just to say that I've done it, and I've done something that people would never thought or could have never believed that I would ever do. That's the same thing with George. Like, he took a chance at something and said, look, I know that this is unique. I know this is something that I believe could take off. It's a risk. I'm going to be that risk taker. I'm going to be the martyr for a cause when it comes to everyone else. And I'm going to open the door, not thinking that he would, but he has opened the door for so many other things. Like, without that, we wouldn't have some of the most valued science fiction platforms that we have right now. So, I mean, that to me, and like you said, even like with Superman, Christopher Reeve, Reeves, portraying that character, someone that was beloved by so many, like, these are things through history that have actually paved the way for what we see. Reeves paves the way, for such things as the MCU and the DC universe right now, such as Star Wars has paved the way for most of the science fiction films that we have now. And it's a beautiful thing. It's even like you said with Road Warrior, it paved the way for like most, post-apocalyptic films that we see now. Like, there's opportunities for films like that to exist and give us a chance to like view films and enjoy and have this love for films that we as much as we do now.
No, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. And it's been interesting to watch mm-hmm. that I think has been the most fascinating thing, to watch that evolution happen. And it just keeps getting more and more. I mean, and now we're getting things like the Foundation books being made into shows, and we're getting like the Wheel of Time series that Stubble's so excited about. We're getting a Sandman TV series. Like, it's unbelievable. We live in a time, if you grew up a geek, it's an embarrassment of riches. It's really an amazing place to be. I mean, it really is.
Definitely.
200 Watt Studio goes on to say, I'm sorry, but there is no way the remake of Shogun can replace John Rhys Davies. Wakari Maska. Yeah, I mean, everyone learned how to speak Japanese. John Rhys Davies was so great. English. I loved him in that. He was so good. Maybe they could bring him. 200 Watt Studio says, I'd like to meet and hang out with William Friedkin just so I can call Rob and tell him where I am. Yeah, and watching To Live and Die in LA in 4K with William Friedkin. Now that would be something to do. Glenn Mark says, sorry, I'm a couple of minutes behind. I'd like to know where to start with the post-Dominion War Star Trek Saga 2. Keen, oh my gosh. Well, it starts with the Deep Space Nine book Avatar is the actual, but that's 20 years. I mean, there's hundreds of books, I think.
Right.
Let's see. There Star Trek reader chart. Let's see if I can find it. There is, it's a flow chart. Here it is. The Trek Lit reading order flow chart. Here it is. I'll put this in the live chat. This actually has the reading order that if you want, I'm putting this in the live chat now, and it will tell you exactly what and where to go. And the Star Trek Litverse flowchart, and it is wow, that's it's incredible. But if you look at it, you're going to be very intimidated. So there you go, Glenn Mark. Check it out. 200 Watt Studio says, my real choice of person I would like to meet would be so I could take her dancing to a secluded oceanside candlelight dinner and to see her stunning smile in person and get to know her.
Wow, 200 Watt Studio. You're so kind. Thank you for your kind words.
And she is looking to have a kid. So before you bite her neck and make her a vampire.
Let's talk off screen, 200 Watt Studio.
Yeah, there you go. Michael Elliott's here and says, hi, Rob and Lael. If you could live in Oz, what occupation would you like to have? I would like to be a bricklayer. I get it. Follow the yellow brick road. If you could live in Oz, what would you like to do? What would be your occupation?
I'd be a baker. I just want to be a baker, because just imagine all the magical things you can create. Like this, I'd be a baker. I'd have to be a baker. This is someone who just bakes desserts and just meets beautiful people all day.
I bet the desserts in Oz are pretty spectacular too.
Exactly. And own a flying monkey.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Could I be one of the witches?
Yeah, I guess you could. That could be your occupation.
I wouldn't be the mean witch. I'd be the, I wouldn't treat people badly.
See, I was going to say I want to be Glenda's fluffer.
Right.
I want to take care of her. I want to take care of Glenda. Michaelito sends in a chat and says, one of my guilty pleasures was Silverado. Great cast, fabulous score, and every Western trope you could think of wrapped up in one homage to Westerns. I love Silverado. I have a great media book of Silverado on Blu-ray. I love Silverado. I think it's great. And the scores, I think it's Bruce Broughton wrote that score. That movie, I love Silverado. What a cast. My God. It's like, and Lawrence Kasdan made that film. I love Silverado. Really good. Well, so we are through these super chats. So what do you think? Go a little while longer and then call it a night. I mean, this has been a nice hangout session.
Yes, it has.
I mean, why don't we call it? It's 3:08. You guys got 20 more minutes in you?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Definitely got 20 more minutes.
Yeah, we'll call it at 3:30 because I have a member. I do member Zoom calls for the channel. I got a member Zoom call tomorrow at 11.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to stay frosty and not drink any alcohol. You didn't need me slurring my words, not at this point. But yeah, so no, but I think that, let me ask you the actual question. The elements, we've talked a lot about different elements in movies, but what do you think, like getting back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, why is it, do you two think that Marvel has been so successful? What is that magic formula that has allowed the Marvel films to flourish, endure? I mean, and it grew from one movie. And if you go back and watch Iron Man 1, it's a fairly intimate movie. And I mean intimate meaning it's really Tony Stark's story. There's no apocalyptic world-ending disaster. He's in conflict with his mentor and fighting for the soul of his company. And basically Obadiah Stane is just like, he's just a capitalist. He wants to make money. And Tony Stark's like, nah, I don't want to make money. We're not going to make weapons anymore. Yeah. And that's where the conflict arises. So what do you guys think is the Marvel secret?
I'm going to say one of the biggest things for them, for me, and I think it's been patience. Patience in the simple fact that they've taken their time to really flesh out the start, the beginning, the middle, and the end, where they want to go, having an idea fleshed out well before we even find out what it is. You don't think that before we got to Endgame, you don't think that before we got to Infinity War and Endgame, Kevin Feige was already thinking about what was going to happen or where the next phase was going. They already had that in play of what was going to happen. Being like 10 steps ahead of themselves has always been an amazing formula. And then on top of that, having someone a huge geek as Kevin Feige is, and knowing the source material and knowing how to translate from comic to cinematic, to basically making us understand, especially for those of us, such as me, myself, who are diehard comic book fans, letting us know that, look, I'm not going to be able to give you everything that you want from this book, but I will give you the special moments that you want and you need. I'm going to give you those moments, because the thing is, for us to flesh out the story that you want, it's going to take up way too much time and a much bigger budget than you would basically want to realize. But I'm going to condense it. I'm going to give you some actual aspects of which you've known throughout the years that you're going to love. But I think it's been more so patience, understanding of how this machine works, and on top of that, giving us character developments, giving us characters who we never thought that we would actually see on screen. You don't know how much I am anticipating seeing Adam Warlock on screen. One of the most a character that I've wanted to see for so many years. You don't think that future, like going down the road, and I'm willing to get, and I bet you any amount of money that James Gunn, and he can't, and that nobody can prove me wrong at this. You don't think that James Gunn, after already seeing the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, is looking at, we do have the X-Men coming up. How about the Starjammers? Let's look at them. You don't think that they're looking at these ideas? I mean, it's been so successful because they put the right people in the right place, and they have patience to write a very good story. And on top of that, they know that they have the source material and how to translate that in film. That's what I think has been really, really successful for them.
Well, and also, as you point out, Kevin Feige worked on 13 Marvel movies before the MCU. So he saw what worked well and what didn't work. And I mean, his job has been to make Marvel movies, and he's unlike any other producer in Hollywood. He learned his craft. He was actually trained to do exactly what he's doing now, which is kind of unique in Hollywood history.
Exactly.
What about you?
I agree with all that, and I also think that there's a great deal of thought and consideration when it comes to who you're casting in these films.
Yes.
I mean, no one can deny that Robert Downey Jr., to his heart, in his deepest heart, is Iron Man. And I think you needed someone, an actor like him, to bring that character to life. I can't even imagine anyone else playing that role.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 years from now, there'll be someone else. But we needed someone who could do that and could do it effectively. And, he just portrays this character that you kind of fall in love with, despite his flaws, despite his arrogance, despite his somewhat, tunnel vision and narrow-mindedness. In the end, this is a good man. And that's what we want to see. We want to see the characteristics that we're accustomed to seeing in these specific characters. And we want actors who can portray them in a way that we feel good about. I actually felt saddened, like, like I've had reactions to some of these characters and the actors they portrayed when they get hurt or when they die or when they get a blow. It's an emotional pain. And, if you can get that emotional involvement in a character like this, that feels very detached from ordinary life, then you've succeeded in winning your audience. They're going to come back for more because they want to continue that. They want to still have that romance. It was like a romance with Robert Downey Jr., wasn't it?
Yeah.
He had this incredible vision, and, we have real life visionaries like this, like maybe Elon Musk, who, I'm going to build a rocket, like these ideas that are infectious, but the person also has flaws. It's kind of like Steve Jobs. He's not a superhero, but Steve Jobs and creating, like the iPhones and things of that nature. These are people that we want to be around and want to understand what makes them tick, because it's going to influence our lives. And I also think that Tony Stark, one of the most interesting things about him is that while he does see himself, this is in my opinion, while he does see himself as a person who can accomplish anything, he also knows that he can't really do any of this stuff alone.
Right.
He doesn't want to admit it, but it's a team effort. And, I think that he has the ability to hold on to you as a fan. I'm still holding on to Iron Man. Those figures are still selling. There's a reason why they're still selling. There's a reason why people are still playing with Iron Man figures, whatever Mach it is, Mach 1, Mach 2, whatever, it doesn't even matter. And also, look at what he did with it. And when I say he, I mean Kevin Feige. Look at what Kevin Feige did. He allowed him to share the technology. In other words, like not all the other superheroes can do that. So now he's bringing us in as well. His wife, let's say Gwyneth Paltrow, and all the characters, Cheadle. Just think about this. He's gone ahead and said, I have a corporation, but I'm going to bring in people who aren't even thinking of doing this, but I need their help. And it's almost like he's grabbing us in to say, you know what? I need your support in this. We all need to do this together. We picked up the challenge. We picked up the fight. We're all rooting for this. Yeah. And, that's what makes you feel good about this story.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and do this. And even in Civil War, I thought it was very clever because of the notion of, sometimes you don't get along. Sometimes you're on a different side of a topic. Sometimes, I can't take that side. And you wonder to yourself as a sibling or, a spouse, whatever, why do they have that? But in the end, you're still going to care about one another. You're still going to, that scene where he's kind of like, hurting Cap. Is it hurting? Obviously they're fighting, but, he's hurting him. And then there's almost a reflection of him hurting himself in a sense, because it breaks your heart. It broke my heart to see it. And that is the magic of what Feige has done, is that between the casting and the execution of all this, we love this. And, we're going to continue to love it 20, 30 years from now.
Exactly.
I totally agree with you. And I think ultimately there's so much thought put into these films, like you were pointing out, Lael, that at the executive level, the planning and there's an understanding, and Kevin Feige's hand-picking, like the Russo brothers, who would have thought that they could direct the movie? But Kevin Feige knew, and getting people like Chloe Zhao, who won the Academy Award for Nomadland, he already secured her to do Eternals.
And Nomadland was a fantastic film, by the way.
Yeah, fantastic film, and it's crazy that the Academy Award winning director of last year has made a Marvel movie.
Exactly.
And that's why when people say, well, it's not real cinema, you're like, come on now. What you're going to tell me Chloe Zhao, who's got a very unique voice, is not? She made a Marvel movie, and it was her take on the material that convinced Kevin Feige to go with her.
Exactly. And she's not just going to pick just anything and say, okay, I'm just going to do. She brought an idea to them. They loved it. She pitched it. They went along with it. And I think it's going to be an amazing film. And the thing is, it's like, who would have thought that we would actually see some of the most complex characters, like these the Eternals, and if you know the story behind the Eternals and their position on the world in that particular, and we're talking about complete world building. We're talking about characters that are responsible of some of the major characters that you see in the actual comic book realm, in the MCU, even right now. Hint, hint, mutants. So this is what I'm saying. Like, you have to be prepared for what you're actually going to see with this film, and the gateway that it actually opens. Like, it's opening you up to so many endless possibilities as to where it's going to go, and it's going to explain a lot. I think that with Eternals, by the time we get to the end of that film, we're going to know exactly what's about to happen, and it's even going to be even more anticipation for what's to come. Fantastic Four, the X-Men, everything that we're going to actually see happen after that, is it's going to be incredible. So everything is done with strategic planning, and I know, and I love it. I just wish, as both a Marvel and a DC fan, I just wish. Now, DC, you don't have to play, and this is what I want to say, you don't have to play catch up. You don't have to do that. You can stay within your own wheelhouse and do things in your own time. You don't have to compete. Just give us great stories. And I just want to see that. I want to see both franchises successful. Because if they're successful, if they have a level of success, then we have a level of success, because we feel as though we've been able to actually, because we've watched this for so many years, that we're taking this journey with them. So just as much as they are successful, we are successful, and we've achieved. Our reward is to see films that are great, and to see things that will continue through, and just extend past the test of time. So I just can't wait.
And I want to add something to that, Lael. And I think, Robert, maybe we were talking about this before, or maybe all of us were talking about this before. I can't remember exactly, but the relationship between Tony Stark and Spider-Man, and like when Spider-Man is kind of like gone in the snap, when he disappears, and he's like, we lost the kid, and it's like, that was. You felt that, this is, this is something else that's happening in this entire story, is that, it is a family. They've actually created a family, not blood relatives, but they are a family. And this is, they're not just fighting for the wealth of, and the goodness of humanity, but they're also fighting for how much they care about one another.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Like, that moment in Infinity War where Spider-Man is talking to Tony Stark when he knows he's about to be dusted, it's really moving. You feel for Spider-Man. And just the way people, even the way people disappeared in that movie, the way they actually portrayed it was so haunting. Like when Winter Soldier walks out, like comes out from the forest, and you see him disintegrating, and I mean, just the way it was done, like they had to figure that out. And there's a million different choices that the Marvel movies, I think, do really, really well. That if any one of them was not a right choice, the movies wouldn't be nearly as good as they are, and the technology. I mean, Thanos, just the portrayal of Thanos, you believe that Thanos is there. Once he starts talking, you're not like, I'm just looking at some CGI thing. Yeah. I mean, they really know exactly how to convey what they want to convey in a way that, and think about it, like that whole end, the whole end of Infinity War, that battle, everything that's happening, they knew when Thor shows up, bring me Thanos or whatever, that moment, what that was like. And they give you these things. They give you those moments they know are going to work because they've, like you said, they planned them. They've workshopped them. And there's so much thought because they really know what they're doing. Because Kevin Feige worked on 13 movies with varying degrees of success before this happened. So he saw what worked and what didn't. And I wish every franchise had that much forethought going in, and they don't. That's the problem. They're trying to do one-offs. Each thing is a one-off. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is something that, the article came out that said they've got 30 projects in active development. They're figuring out, okay, how can we make this all work? I wish Star Trek had that.
Right. And that's the thing, is it's like to see this all right. I mean, as a comic book fan and someone who's been collecting comics for so many years, you know, there's a time and a place for everything. And I think now that technology is so far advanced, especially on film, this is our time. Things that characters that you never thought that you would ever see on film that you're able to see now, and you can enjoy that all just made from the contributions and vision from one individual who stuck to his guns and said, look, I'm going to give you what you want, but just be patient. You know what I mean? I can't just give you everything on the plate. The dessert comes after the dinner. You know what I mean? So just be patient. We're going to see some, but and that's what I think is what's making this franchise so successful, because even if we can't see these things in certain IPs on the big screen, we have Disney Plus, we have some of the animated series, you know, we have all of these things that are going to, it's going to be tied together with a nice little bow. And I enjoy that. And like you said, Rob, I just wish other franchises would do that. Just their attention to detail and patience, just to say, look, we're not going to try to rush this thing. Trust us. Just trust us as we go. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man is who Robert Downey Jr. is in real life, to tell you the truth. That's who he is. Like, seriously. And you couldn't have picked a better character. Chris Evans as Cap. I couldn't see anybody else basically playing that role. You know, to basically see, you know, Anthony Mackie as Falcon, to see, you know, the late Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, as Black Panther. Like, these are iconic. I mean, Scarlett Johansson, which I'm so happy that Disney, you have come to an agreement and everything is done. I'm so happy that this is happening, and I was so worried about it, but I'm glad. But to see these characters, you know, on screen, and they picked great choices, like in characters, like their choices in actors to portray these characters, like it's phenomenal. And I don't think they're going to stop. They're going to keep going despite everything else that's happening outside. I think look, people out there, it's a great time to be a comic book fan, a science fiction fan, to just love all of this stuff in general. It's a great time for us right now.
I completely agree. By the way, Connie Sang says, thanks for a fun and engaging show and a great live chat crew as well. I concur, Connie. I mean, what a great conversation this has been.
Yes.
200 Watt Studio says the other cool thing about Robert Downey Jr. was that we were rooting for him in real life too.
Yes.
We knew what he'd been through, and we loved seeing him succeed. I think that is a great point, because remember, there was such things made about, like, they couldn't get him insured in Iron Man 1, or
because of his past
addiction
situation.
issues and things, and it was great. I think that there's an element of that's true. In real life, we wanted him to succeed because, you know, he'd been in movies for a long time. He was nominated for an Oscar for Chaplin, and he was an incredible actor. And, you know, things get crazy. People suffer the throes of addiction, and he was able to get out of that and clean his life up. And you know,
phenomenal comeback.
It is. And to see him be a part of all of this, and, like, you know, he would make sure, for instance, like, you heard stories like on the sets of these movies, he would bring in a special chef to cook everybody food, and he just, like, you can tell that it really meant a lot to him, and he gave it his all, and we got a lot from him, and it's I think 200 Watt Studio is absolutely correct. I think that we wanted to root for him in real life as well.
My question to you is, Rob, do you think we will see him back in the MCU?
I think in some form. I mean, you know, it could be a hologram, it could be some kind of a thing, but I honestly, I kind of hope not, though.
Yeah.
Only because I love that whole journey that he took from
what he took, and we got what we needed from him. Exactly.
Yeah, and to bring it back, I mean, one of the things I really like about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that we're going to meet these people, and new people are going to come, and old people are going to go, and you know, I don't know how they're going to handle Chad Boseman's passing, but whatever it's going to be interesting. And we know that they're not recasting him, so they're going to move forward somehow with however they do that. That'll be fascinating, because I think one of the things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is it is one long interconnected story, And I think that's part of its appeal. We like seeing that story grow and progress and flourish and bring in new people and do new things. And sure, we eventually, I mean, we've still got Captain America's situation has changed, obviously. Steve Rogers is still around, but he's, what, 80? And then we've got, but I like that. I think that's great. And we'll see where it goes.
Did either of you feel, I mean, it felt like he was still with us in one of the episodes. If people haven't watched all of the What If episodes, but in one of the episodes where he was featured, you know, it felt like he was still with us. I know that sounds very corny, but it just does really feel that way to me. So
no, and with the multiverse, the quantum realm, I mean, who knows who we're going to see? Because you could easily get a Robert Downey Jr. from a different universe, you know, where he hasn't died. So, or didn't go back through time, or however they want to do it. I don't know.
I will say that what if has not been very kind to Thanos. Not at all.
No.
Not at all. Has not been kind to Thanos, right? It's just like, nope, we're not going to go down that road. Nope.
And he got cut in half.
I like the joke that everybody's like, that sounds like you're saying it's whatever. I don't want to spoil it for people because they haven't seen it, but like where they say it's genocide and like I think it's interesting to look at the same person in a different situation, but you know, clearly it is genocide.
Listen, Hot Toys. This last episode, please. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
please.
I want that so bad.
Please, Hot Toys, please. You open that door, don't close it. After this last episode, it was extremely incredible. It was pop. Listen, just give it to us.
Can you explain the ambition of creating an episode where they're going from, you know, multiverse and multiverse to multiverse and multiverse, like in such lightning fast speed, and it was perfect. The colors, you know, the sizes of the characters. This thing was just like, oh my god! Like you just, I still am, you know, on a high from that episode.
Oh my god!
Oh, it's so much fun.
Several times. I've watched this, and the thing is, it's like I don't want to. Because I know there's probably a lot of people in this chat that haven't actually seen it yet, but I'll just say it this. I'll say it this way: if you were going through these episodes, wondering, okay, when are we going to get to something? This last episode is what you have been waiting for, and I think this next episode is the crescendo. Seriously, so just pay attention and just ride this wave with these last two episodes. Like they're heading towards something. And guess what, Rob? I have pre-ordered both the Captain Carter and the Hydra Stomper with Steve Rogers. Yes, I have.
Yeah, I mean those are great figures too. I mean I like those figures. Yes, I that Hydra Stomper is amazing. Yes. But I really want our friend from this past episode.
Yes, bro. Give it to us. Just give it. You know what? Give us both him and Watu. I'll take Watu as well.
Yeah,
please.
You know, one of the things I thought for sure, one of my favorite moments in any, like I'm an Ultron fan, and one of my favorite moments in any comic book is in the Kurt Busiek and George Perez run on Avengers. It's Avengers 22, where you know Ultron's taken over a country, he's murdered millions of people, and there's this great moment where the Avengers, like they smash down the entryway to where Ultron is, and Thor is standing there bloodied, and he's got his hammer up, and everyone's just beat to shit, and the caption is Thor says, "Ultron, we would have words with thee," and it's one of my favorite comic. It's a small panel too. It's not even a splash page. I thought for sure in Avengers: Age of Ultron we were going to see that
moment. Yeah,
I thought for sure, and I was waiting for it. That was the only. I think Avengers: Age of Ultron gets better year after year. Anyway, I like it.
I like that film too.
I think it's really good, and man, it didn't happen, but I'm sure in the future it still could. It still could.
Yes.
But man, that's why I love Ultron as a villain. That's why I particularly enjoyed the last episode of What If.
And you know who voiced him in this last episode?
No, who?
the guy who actually voiced Red Skull, and he's the same.
Oh,
Yeah, he did the voice of Ultron. Like
wow!
he's
I didn't know
talented.
that.
Like he's incredible. Yeah, but he did the voice of Ultron. Yep.
Wow. All right. 200 Watt Studio says, "What if? How about why if?" Well, I don't know. I mean, I think what if? I think it's fun. I've been enjoying
I
it.
love it. I love it.
I mean,
the
I love
show.
the comics when I was a kid. It's not that they were the greatest comics in the world, but it was always fun. Half the time the universe ended, and I like the fact that they seem to be going in that direction.
Yeah.
Which is good. John says, congrats on 50 shows.
Yeah, 50 shows, 50 episodes. Yes, love it, man.
Well, listen,
Definitely.
this 50th episode of Midnight Metal was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I would like to know, before we end this, Lael, where can people find you?
People can find me at the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel. That is 1/6 Scale Man. We have so much going on. We have Comic Book with Friends that we usually discuss nothing but comics and everything in the MCU realm, the DCEU realm, just in comics in general. Doesn't matter what, we bring people in on the discussion. We do that on Monday nights. Then we have the Say What episode normally on, either Wednesdays. I think on Wednesdays we normally have that episode where we just, talk about collectibles. We talk about movies, but more so collectibles. That's basically what it is. 6 scale collectible statues, stuff like that. And then we also on Thursdays, every other Thursday, we actually have Uncivilized Scoundrels, where we discuss any and everything Star Wars related. So yes. And actually, Rob, what I'm going to do is I want to get you and Blue Susan and on an episode on a Wednesday night, possibly to discuss, because I want an education on Star Trek. That's what I want. I'm gonna schedule it out, but I want an education. And I know that Blue Susan, she's just as much as a huge a Star Trek fan as you are, Rob, and is,
I don't think I know Blue Susan.
She was actually Susan Damon. She was the face at one point of Sideshow. She was the face of Sideshow a long time ago. Yeah, so she was there a while ago before she departed. But yeah, she's a huge Star Trek fan, and listen, you both would have an interesting discussion. But yeah, you can actually, again, you can find me at the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel. If you haven't actually already subscribed, subscribe now. I just got my notification today from YouTube that I can now accept members to the, whatever. So it's just, this little thing. But yeah, but definitely you can actually find me on that page. And I'm happy to have everybody on board. Thank you. I mean, because of this show, because of Midnight Metal, I actually reached my goal a couple weeks ago, and it's still going. So I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Thank everybody here. You, Rob. I love this. This right here, this show right now is just my apple pie. I love being on this show. So anytime we have Midnight Metal, I'm here. Anytime you want me to be here, I'm here to have these discussions. I can go all day, all night. Let's go.
Oh, well, it's great to have you here.
Love
and
it.
It's just again another example of meeting people that are great people and that you just want to hang out with and talk.
Yes.
We can't see each other because we're all in different parts of the country, but it's great to have you here now.
Yes, love it.
And what about you? Where can people find you?
On the Burnettwork.
Yes, you can. And there's more. I've got a backlog of all your interviews, but I'm gonna put everything up. This coming week I want to get back to I got to get the channel back to where it used to be, where I'm on every day, and it just because my work on Tango Shalom is
you got a lot going on right now, bro.
winding. Yeah, it's winding down, so I can finally get back.
Lael, anytime you want me to come on and stream with you, I am there. So just say the word.
Yes, I cannot wait. I would love to have you. If you next say, hey, because we know we got. Well, actually, no, we do. We got Uncivilized this Thursday. You'll be at Comic-Con, but you said that you might be available that night, right?
Well, it's from 10. Comic-Con is from 10 to 5, right? Or 10 to 7, something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll be home before 9. You start
okay, cool.
at 9.
9:15.
Okay, I'll be home and
we'll be on. And
I'll
be there to
absolutely
see you on Friday.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes.
How cool is that? I'm all jelly, but I'm not going to be in NYC.
Robert.
I've never been to
man,
the
we
New York
gotta-
Comic Con. I've never gone.
Oh,
Oh my God, bro.
oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, I've been
It's-
going to
it's-
San Diego Comic Con since 1988, but I've never been to the
Yeah.
New York Comic Con.
New York Comic Con is just as huge. It is huge, bro. It is. It is huge. It is huge.
Yeah, I've never been to San Diego Comic Con, so
Oh,
Next San Diego Comic Con, when it's open to the public and everybody can go and we can be safe, I'm definitely going. And Rob, we will be there, bro.
oh yeah. Well, I want to come. I'm gonna come visit you out there.
Yes, definitely.
I want to come to Harrisburg.
Come to Harrisburg, bro. I will show you around. You would love this place, bro.
I just because it was mentioned in Dawn of the Dead, and
Yeah.
I have to see Harrisburg.
Bro, you come to Harrisburg, I'll show you. You will love this place, bro. It is. We have so many hidden treasures. It's so many hidden treasures here, man. It is. It is. You'd love it.
Well, listen, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. What a great show. The Richard
Yes.
and Darren Seeley moderators. Thanks for being here. I very
Yes,
much
thank
appreciate our blue wrenches for everything you do. Thank you so much, and all the generous people that have supported the channel via super chats and tips. Thank you so
Definitely.
much tonight.
Yes.
Very much appreciate that. And
Like this video. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Like
Yes.
this channel. Love it. Come on, man. Let's keep this ball rolling. 50. We're gonna
Yes.
have like 1,000 more. Let's go.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that. I very much appreciate that. And you can send us letters if you want to send letters. I always read letters live on the show. You can go to the Burnettwork.net website, which is the website component of the channel, and send me letters there. And obviously, I read them on all of our shows. And of course, Robservations will be back this weekend, and we're doing Let's Get Physical Media. Dear Bastian and I will be doing that on Sunday. And yeah, and this was a great. I can't believe Midnight Metal has lasted 50 episodes,
Yes.
but it has.
Every time I hear Midnight Metal, you know I'm always thinking about Heavy Metal, the book and the movie, bro.
Yep,
Yes.
right. As well, you should.
Exactly.
As well, you should.
Yeah.
Can you believe that movie's 40 years old this year?
Yeah.
Heavy Metal
bro.
came out 40 years ago.
Oh man.
Mhm.
Oh man. I can remember my brother when that film first hit the animated and we watched it at home. He's like, "Mom, titties."
Leandro Urena sends in a super chat sticker, a super chat badge, gives us a big thumbs up.
Thank you, Leandro.
Thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, gentle beings from across these, the 28 known galaxies, however you identify, I'm going to bring this Midnight Metal episode 50 to an end. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say to all of you, have a better night.
Yes, yes.